Item 5.1, convene in public session. Time is 5:21. Okay. At this time, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you can remain.
There's,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
like a moment of silence from one of our employees that has passed away, Mr. Robert Murphy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hold on. Item 7.1, recess the board. The board president will recess the meeting to conduct regular board meeting of the California Military Institute. Reconvening the meeting, or the regular, I'm all confused today. Reconvening the regular board meeting of Paris Union High School District at 5:37. Wait, I gotta go back. What just happened? Are we back on there? Right. Okay, so item 8.1 is revision, adoption, ordering of agenda, February 20th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Stafford and Dr. Arau. Please vote, or excuse me, gentlemen, is there any discussion? Please vote. Item 8.1 is a 5-0 vote.
Could we hold up a second on that? We did have a couple of items for revision.
Okay.
We were removing item 14.6 from the agenda. We haven't voted yet.
Wasn't 15.7?
We're going to talk about when we get to
So
that.
we have to go back and vote again.
So wait till we get to that.
Any other?
No, we're looking at removing item 14.6 from the consent calendar. Action item, sorry, action item.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to be doing a vote orally. Oh, you have to amend it.
I'm still showing 8.1 here. Wait.
We're on 8.1. We have to go back. And because it's amended, if you made the original motion, you have to amend it to accept the agenda of 14.6.
Okay, I make a motion to rescind the original vote on 8.1
Yes. With the,
and amend it
by,
to take out 14.6.
that's okay.
Okay.
Right? But it's okay. We'll be all right. Okay, at this time. Yeah, just a second. Dr. Rao? Dr. Rao is making the second. All those in favors with the amended motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? 5-0 vote. Okay, we shall carry on. Item 9.1 is an information item, report out of closed session.
Just one thing to report out of closed session. In closed session, by a vote of 5-0, the Board of Trustees approved the appointment of Scott Genton as plant supervisor of Heritage High School with an effective date to be determined. And that concludes my closed session report.
Yes, no?
He's not here.
Okay.
We
I
bring
was trying to
him,
be nice anyway.
Give me this other one.
we finally got one.
Item 9.2 is the information item, oral reports by the superintendent.
Yes, I do have a few items. First thing I'd like to do is, last month, the board voted to hire a new plant supervisor for Paloma Valley High School. I want to introduce you to him tonight. Mr. David Aguilera. Come on up, David.
Good evening. Thank you all. Excited to be here. My name is David Aguilera over at Paloma Valley High School, new plant manager. Just excited for the opportunity to be here. It's really huge for me and my family. I was born, raised in Paris. I've lived here for 30 years, so nice to come back and give back to the community now. Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, David. Well, over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of excitement with all the rainstorms and the flooding in different areas, but we got through that part okay. So far, so good. So we're moving forward. We're excited about some of the construction going on down at Paloma with the new building going in there. Good seeing the progress happening down that, and on the new ticket booth bathroom and snack bar facility. I said bathroom. We want to thank the board for being at the groundbreaking for Liberty High School just the other week. I know it was ugly out there, the rain, the wind, and the cold, but we persevered and got through, and it was a great showing for our community also. Over 100 people there in that kind of weather to show up and take part. We were really excited about that, and we look forward to doing those same types of things at Paris High School and CMI as we move forward with their projects. There's somebody else I want to introduce and give a chance to talk to us this evening. Miss Rachel, I'm going to call you Dow, but it's Post, I'm sorry. Rachel Post, it's written down as Rachel Post. She's heading up the group that's doing the Paris Challenge, Sports Challenge. Sports Challenge.
This is our 8th year. Yeah, thank you, board and cabinet, for having me here. So this is our 8th year. It's going to be on March 9th from 8 to 12. It'll be at Paris High School, and it'll be in the gym. It's our special needs students that participate in this. It's like a Special Olympics event, and all our students look forward to it. We're also inviting this year Penicotti, so hopefully they'll get on board too to participate in this event. And it's free to the public, and it's a great event, and we hope to see you there. I have a little slideshow for you. Here's your dogs. So it's really a great event that our students really look forward to. It's their moment to shine. A lot of times our students are overlooked, and it's a huge accomplishment for them to participate in this, and we'd love to see you there. So, the other thing I was going to talk about was our Pathways program. And I was at Paris High School for 10 years, and I miss it, but with everything in life, things happen, and I thought, you know what, this is our first year with our 18 and 22 students, and I decided to take the leap and the jump, and I decided to be a teacher at this program. This is our first year, so of course there's the little bumps in the road, but we're making it happen. So I did a quick slideshow just of my classroom and what we've participated in and what we've done for the semester. It's a lot of work, and I'm very proud of where we're at this point. We do a lot of things on campus, and we also do a lot of things outside of campus too. So we're hoping the following years that we just build upon the experiences that we've had. So I'll just show a little. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Just hit the arrow. Okay. So what I do usually is on Monday we do community-based instruction where the students go out into the community and they learn how to go shopping. A lot of it's life skills. We also have a vocational room that we use on Tuesday where we learn how to take care of a house, household things like making a bed, doing ironing, cooking, and also just how to set a table. A lot of this is just basic life skills that our students need as they become adults. The other thing is that we do a lot of cooking too. So on Monday, what I do with my students is I usually use the RTA, or we use our vans, and we go out to the market and they do shopping and they find the food that they're going to cook for on Tuesday. So we do that too. The other thing we do is a lot of team building exercises because we're looking for leadership and them to take the role in work, and that's the whole process of it too. And importance of teamwork. And then we also do travel trainings on their IEPs where they do travel training. They learn how to do safety in the community as far as looking at safety signs and how to use the RTA. My students also have disabled passes that the RTA provided. They were assessed for that, and then we try to do that on a weekly basis to have them use the public transportation. They also plan their routes. And so that way, a lot of them, once they leave the program at age 22, hopefully they will use the RTA so they can relieve their parents to not have to drive them around. There's just the community that we go into, the markets. I do scavenger hunts so they learn how to do shopping, how to locate items, how to do budgeting. Part of our community-based instruction too is just being out in our community and understanding how to participate in it, because a lot of times our students are not in the community. So we go to fast food places and we learn how to give the correct change, so we make sure that we get the money back and things like that, that they don't have any problems with that. Other things we do is see things that they haven't seen before. On Monday we're going to go to the alpaca farm. We go to the skydiving. We do a lot of things that the students have never done before, and they get out of their comfort zone and experience that. We go to Temecula, but they also do scavenger hunts with that too, how to locate things on the map. We do a lot of community type of things. So you could just see that the Air Force Museum. More of the Air Force Museum. Downtown Temecula. More downtown Temecula. But some of my students have never been to Temecula, so it's pretty cool for them to see that. And just to be a part of that, other students and have that experience, so they're not always with their parents. So we also do field trips. Usually we do it with the site. So all classes go. We have 5 teachers, including me, at the site. We also have a set of Chromebooks. Thank you to Joe for setting us up with that. I use Classcraft in my class. I didn't know if the students would like it because they're adults, but they love it. And it's a great team building exercise too, because I break them up into groups, and they have to talk amongst one another when we do boss battles. And then also they have independent work to work on too. We also have our adaptive PE teachers at least once a month teaching our students site-wide different types of exercises that they can do. And then the work component. Every week we work 2 hours, and that's paid time. Right now we have Texas Roadhouse. We also worked at Paloma High School repairing some of the Chromebooks. James has recently come and taught our students how to repair Chromebooks too, so we're hoping to roll that out and get that going with them repairing things too. Each class is also responsible to serve breakfast and lunch at the site. We get that from nutritional services, and my students have food handlers cards, so those students that are in that at Texas Roadhouse and in the kitchen can only have a food handler's card in order to serve the food. So they have to pass the test and then do that too. Some of the students from this program also have received jobs in the past, so that's what we're hoping to with Texas Roadhouse. We used to pick up lunch and breakfast, and that was part of their duties at Paris High School. We no longer have to do that, so that's what we had to do. And then we also incorporate the social time, and that's also in the vocational room. There's things that they can play, and then the huge component of that is a lot of times they don't have time to talk to their friends, and we include that too. There's more social time. And then I also do the interview process. We do mock interviews. They all dressed up, they interviewed. I'm hoping to roll that out again this semester, so I want to get some new people to interview them. Maybe some of you would be great. But they all dressed up, and they all had to be interviewed, and they also got rated on their performance for the interview. And that's last week of school before winter break. And they also had a talent show that one of the teachers did. And then at age 22, our students leave. So if they're at 22 in winter semester, they will be leaving our program. But they participate also in a June graduation with a cap and gown. So our graduation will be at Heritage in the auditorium. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Post.
Thank you.
I have just a few other things. I want to take a moment and congratulate Kirk Skorpanich. He was selected AXA Region 19 Personnel Administrator of the Year. That's for Riverside County. Congratulations, Kirk. I believe his name moves on to the state competition now to see it, and I don't see anybody more deserving than Kirk for that, so we're looking forward to his victory there too. He'll be honored at a awards dinner in May at the Riverside Convention Center. I think I have to give it to him. After last board meeting, Dr. Judy White came and visited our district. She met with me for a while, and then she wanted to see a school. So I took over to Paris High to show her all the new construction that we've done over there over the years. And she was so impressed with the CET programs that we brought in there and what we're doing with kids, that she sent in a reporter back from RCOE to do a whole story on what we've done at Paris High on the remodeling and reprogramming over there. So that was really cool to have her visit us. Last Friday, Candace and I were able to go to Romaland Elementary School ribbon cutting they redid all of Romaland Elementary School, made it more modern, put in some new construction, and redid the whole school really. It was the original school they had. And so we were there and representing the district, and they did a nice job over there. We don't have the kids here tonight for doing their reports, but I did want to announce Paloma Valley wrestler Savion Dixon was first ever for Paloma Valley as a wrestling CIF champion. So it's cool to have that. And this coming Saturday, we'll have students being recognized at the Paris African American History Day celebration at Foss Field on Saturday at about noon. They'll be receiving their awards. So we have kids from each of our schools that have been nominated for awards, so they'll all be there. And that concludes my report at the end. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Next item is 9.3, CSEA President Josh Rushing.
Let me note this time. Good evening, Board President, Mr. Garcia, board members, Superintendent, Mr. Bennett, Cabinet. I'd like to lead off this evening by saying that I'm excited that we were able to get our IP, initial proposal, to the board this month. We had to really kind of push through the timelines to get it here in time. We look forward to opening negotiations. There was quite a few things that we were opening. Most of it's just language changes. Hopefully we can get it done before our contract's up. We also voted last week to approve the language changes for Article 9 of our CBA as part of our TA for 18-19 reopeners. Hopefully that'll be coming to you guys next month. We just got it done last Wednesday, so we missed the deadline. Finally, I'd like to mention that we're almost done with the 7 additional work days for the campus supervisors that were negotiated for this year. I would like to thank John Hannon and Judy Miller for setting up all the trainings we have done, and hopefully we can continue these types of trainings for all of our members. They're very valuable just to keep your eyes out for certain situations, so I think it'd benefit everybody. That being said, see you next month.
Flip the other way. Good evening, Board President, Mr. Garcia, Board, Mr. Bennett, and Cabinet. It's February. It's ski week. That's what they call it, I guess. But I have a lot of people that are on cruises, so I think they went the wrong way. So as we move into second semester, PSCA will be doing a lot of things for our members. Each month we are going to be doing a luncheon. We do it on Fridays. We take lunch to the sites. We get a really good deal from Pizza Factory and Menifee. And so we go see them, and they provide us with everything. We deliver it to the schools. Thank you, Mr. Newman. We have 15 teachers that will be attending the Good Teaching Conference. And I think when I counted, there were 90 possible sessions they could go to in the 2 days. And it covered anything from special ed to taking care of yourself as a teacher, what you needed to do to retirement. So a lot of good stuff. It's not just all, in fact, very little of it is geared just toward CTA stuff. It's about good teaching, what you need to have. We're planning additional events for our teachers in the coming months. We don't have everything solidified. We're going to be doing a day at the Storm Stadium and maybe a movie theater and a couple other things for our members. We have created what we're calling the PSEA Equity Team, and it's headed by my LGBTQ EMLD director, Misha Labas. And this is comprised of teachers from all of the sites. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to be highlighting events in the district that address equity, Black History Month, Women's History Month. We're not going to just be looking at PSEA, though. We're actually looking for CSEA and students along with PSEA members. And so she's rolling that out. They're forming everything now, and they'll be probably in the next couple weeks rolling out even more information about what they're doing. I've been trying to get this particular group started for about 4 years, so I think I finally got somebody that's going to run with it and do a really good job. I'm excited about that. I was also excited to see the presentation about PALS. However, I did want to talk tonight a little bit about some concerns that I had about PALS. And that is, I'm not sure that all of the members, all of the young people there are getting the same experience. From what I understand, there's transportation issues and that they don't seem to have enough transportation to transport all the students, and that there's difficulty finding employers, that the contract that the district has is very, very, very tight, and that RTA limits who they allow to be trained on the buses. So they have, if you're below a certain spectrum, they won't let them take them on and be trained, RTA trained. And so there's just things like that that I think that moving forward that maybe we need to ask some more questions about. When I've got teachers saying, hey, how do we fix this? I think it has to be a whole group, because I think that it's a great program, and we're excited to have it in our district. But let's make sure that we're doing it for everybody the same way and not just a select few. And so it breaks my heart, when I hear they didn't have paper for Valentine's. So, stuff like that. We're looking at our contract openers. I'm not sure if they got them sent in yet. No? I was hoping they had them over here by today. But we'll get them in March. So I know they've been meeting and they have their list probably ready. They just didn't get it over in time. So, again, it was great to be out at the ribbon cutting, or the groundbreaking, not the ribbon cutting. Oh, yeah, I know, it's the other way. Hey, my brain was too wet that day and cold. But it was good to see all the people there and the excitement. And thank you, Candace, for the Menifee 24/7. I think it helped give a lot of information to the public, too. Oh, you're welcome, yeah. Nobody wants a soggy jacket, so. But thank you again, and again, we've got to keep looking out for the kiddos. They're the ones that are important, If we're not taking care of them, got to keep them in the seats. So thank you.
Thank you. Next item, 9.5, comments by the Board of Trustees. Dr. Arau.
Yes, President Garcia. I just would like to reemphasize again and bring this topic, Mr. Bennett, about the replication of the program that we have at Rubido with Mountain San Jacinto. We are in the process of implementing that this August, correct? Okay, because that is one of the, is a great thing. The main objective, just for the public and for the record, is to have this agreement with Mountain San Jacinto, so potentially when students graduate from high school, they get their high school diploma and their AA. There is that potential there. Professors from Mountain San Jacinto are going to come to the sites, and they are going to be teaching those college level classes to our students. And that's where we are at. So combine that with the other program that we have, that our teachers have a master's degree and they teach the classes and they get college credit, that is going to be excellent. So we are ahead of, in this case, of the original program from Rubido High School that is called Rubido Early College High School. So I don't know how this is going to be. It's going to be an early college, but that is the ultimate goal. And I think it's a great benefit for our students and for the parents of our students. They are going to have almost half of their bachelor's degree completed when they finish their high school. Yeah. I also would like to say thank you to the teacher who made the presentation about the PULSE program. Excellent job. Thank you for helping our students. Thank you to Ms. Mueller. She already left. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, she moved there for bringing up those concerns to provide the services to our students, the students from PALS. They cannot advocate from themselves, but we can do it for them. So thank you for advocating for our students, Ms. Mueller. And if you can provide the specific elements and the information that you are receiving to the teachers directly to Mr. Bennett, and I'm sure that he is going to focus on addressing those issues for our students, because that's the least that we can do, right, to provide all the resources to the teachers so they can do their job with the students and provide anything or any resources or anything that is missing so our students have access to the best possible education. So thank you for doing that. That's the only thing that I wanted to comment. Thank you.
I also wanted to reiterate Ms. Mueller's comments about this time to Candace. And thank you for helping set up the groundbreaking ceremony. I thought it was a good jump start, and also to Hector. Everybody who was involved. I'm not exactly sure who all I'm talking to, but I thought it was a really good way to kick off the entire project and get a chance to meet some community members that have active ties to the new school being built as well. So it was really good. Thank you.
I also survived the groundbreaking, although I thought it was going to be ground slurping after a while. It was amazing, the coincidence that as soon as we finished, the rain stopped. I'd also like to express my gratitude for allowing me to participate as a judge in the essay contest that we had at Paris High School a few weeks back. I got teamed up with the principal from Paris High School to judge the essay portion where we had their scripts, and some of them would go halfway through just being able to give it verbatim. And I was amazed, especially one young lady that was just flowing through the whole thing. I also enjoyed the fact that I got to spend some time with a principal and I wasn't in trouble. I'd also like to bring up the administration at Paloma Valley with their athletic department. You know, I've mentioned before that two of my daughters participate, and they were members of the undefeated league champion water polo, and one of them is still crazy enough that she wants to go swimming in this weather. The support that we get, the quality of the coaching that we get there, and the support from the administration, as a father, I am just very, very tickled pink about it. Girls who are not overlooked, they may not be the starters, but they're not waiting till the last 2 minutes of the game to be scrubs playing in garbage time either. So it just really, really excites me to know that we've got such great people over there with their athletic department, and very supportive from the administration. Thank you.
Just one thing that came to mind. Thank you to Candace and the whole team, everybody. You're the head of that particular facilities, and I was able to see a few pictures that Candace showed me of the new site, and I saw Hector's trailer out there in the mud, and I said, "Oh, Hector, we got to get you some fireman boots." And I know what it's like out there when the school is rough, and you're out there doing the rough part. So, you know, thank you for so much you do, and I'll be sure to come and visit you. I'll give you a call. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you from any position in the district for attending the groundbreaking. That was intense. That cold weather was something else. I was just like, and as you could tell, I'm suffering from it now. Sarah, thank you very much. Miss Anna, Miss Candace, thank you for your hospitality. You made my kids feel very welcome, and you know, to me that means a lot as well. I appreciate all of you, you know, all your hard work, and now we're gonna get a new school out of it. Look, guys, hey. Mr. Rushing, I want to thank you guys. When Mr. Bennett and I, the other week, we got to tour some of the campuses. We got to speak to your fellow colleagues and everything. I want you to know we're listening, and however we could support you, we will. And then Ms. Mueller, as well as you voiced some concerns. We're listening, we're secretly talking with our eyes, but we're gonna be addressing those issues. And then, lastly, I wanna say thank you to the FFA program in general. Amazing. I got to participate and be one of the judges for the speech contest. Those kids are amazing. They blew me away. I was like, I need to control myself a little. I was just working on me. I was like, oh my goodness. Blew me away. They're amazing. And so if we could get that message back to the kids, I love them. And that concludes.
Mr. President Garcia, can I make one more comment, please? Okay. After the groundbreaking ceremony, there was a posting on Menifee 24/7 Facebook, and there was a concern about some misinformation that it was there on an article. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Candice and congratulations for doing an excellent job during the Menifee 24/7 Facebook live interview. I think you provided very clear information. You answered the questions of the community, mostly from Menifee, and they received the information that they deserve. It was clear. So it seems, based on the comments that were being posted there, that they were happy, that they appreciated, that you were straightforward, and you were very, very clear. There was nothing that we were hiding, and a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions were clarified. And I think that was great, and they really appreciated that. So excellent job. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Are there any takers? No? None at this time. All right. Item 11.1, consent calendar, approval of consent calendar items. Before we, are we good? Okay, we're good. So moved,
Second.
Mr. Nelson. And who is my second?
Me.
Dr. Arau. Thank you. Any discussion? No? Please vote. Item 11.1 is 5-0 vote. Item 12.1, low-performing students block grant presentation.
This is Dr. Newman and Ms. Martin are going to lead us through this, similar to what we're doing with CMI.
So President Garcia and the board, a few weeks ago, we, in the closed session, the question came up in regards to differentiated assistance. And so included in this presentation today, we also wanted to update the board in regards to differentiated assistance and really connect the dots between how we're using this funding to improve student achievement. So with that, we'll get started. And so differentiated assistance, I think many of us who are educators remember back during No Child Left Behind, we had what was called, the term was used, program improvement, where basically it was very prescriptive, where individuals came in when your kids weren't achieving and basically give you very specific directions in regards to what you needed to change in regards to the school, basically reconstructing your school. This process now is a kinder, gentler system of support. That's what the county is now calling and the state is calling it, where they come up alongside you and kind of work with you and collaborate with you versus coming in and being very prescriptive. And so what you see up here is kind of the different levels of support that the county and the state is kind of providing in regards to support for schools. And so this is kind of California's support system. So you see there's a level 1 support, and that's basically what's provided to all schools, similar to what we do in regards to MTSS. Level 2 is differentiated assistance, and this is basically some criteria where after schools aren't meeting specific criterias, they come together for what's called differentiated assistance, meaning the assistance looks different depending on kind of what schools they're working with. So you see the different levels of support as well as you move from left to right. You see kind of California Educational Agency, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence is a part of that, as well as CDE. Then you get to the local educational agency, and then the county offices of education throughout the state are also providing the direct support to the districts You also have what's called geographical lead agencies. Those are basically agencies that are going to take the lead for specialty support. And so, for instance, MTSS, if you see on the board, Orange County is kind of heading that work up. Riverside County, they'll be heading up the equity work as well. And so every different agencies have specific areas that they're focused on. So we're working directly with our COE in regards to this work. In regards to more specific, in regards to the why and how we qualify for differentiated assistance. And so if you look on the board, from once again, from right to left, you have kind of the district that's listed there. You have the student group or student population there that basically is the group that kind of showed up on our dashboard as red. You have the dashboard indicators right next to that. And so you see for our English learners, academic indicator, that's ELA and math in terms of student achievement. That was a red, I believe for a red and an orange for our ELs. Suspension rate, you have the college and career readiness in regards to our English learners, and then you also have your state priorities. And so you have our groups there specifically listed that basically moved us into differentiated assistance. And then I'll hand it over to my trusty sidekick.
Oh, thank you. So Dr. Newman talked about the district level of support. So the state didn't want to leave out the schools. So there's two different categories that the state has identified that schools can be eligible for additional support, and that's comprehensive support and improvement, otherwise known as CSI. And then we have targeted support and improvement as TSI. And then later on the page, they've added another acronym, and it's called Additional Targeted Support and Improvement, and that's ATSI. So if you feel like you've just entered the NCIS, we have arrived. So with that, we do have some schools that are met the criteria, and the first one is the Comprehensive Support and Improvement. That's the CSI status. And so based on the dashboard, schools would have to have met these indicators, one of these indicators. So schools, and this is on the relating to the California dashboard. So we do have one school that met the criteria, and that was Paris Lake High School. They met one of the criteria for CSI. And that breaks down into this flow chart. You can see that 3 of the dashboard indicators were red. And that was under suspension, rate, English language arts, and the college and career indicator showed up red. They had 1 orange under mathematics, and they had a green indicator, which is good under graduation rate. But when you have a majority of red indicators, that puts you into the CSI status. With that status, the state has provided financial support that we will, on behalf of Ed Services and the business department and working with the leadership team at Paris Lake High School, we'll be working with them on including in their school plan how they're going to utilize $166,211 to help support the initiatives and endeavors to be able to move those dashboard indicators to, yellow, green, and blue. So that's just a snapshot of how Paris Lake was identified for CSI. So part of the process, and they have an accountability for the money that they will be receiving, and we'll be working with them closely in Ed Services and collaboration. So each of our Title I schools have to do a school plan for student achievement, otherwise known as the SIPSA, and this is where this information will be shared. You will get all of those plans from all of our schools at the June board meeting, so you'll have an opportunity to look at what specifically Paris Lake will be doing with those funds to help move those indicators to a more positive direction. Oh, wow, that was way too fast. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So the second category is the TSI, which is the Targeted Support and Improvement. So I just highlighted in red really the difference between the CSI and the TSI. I'm really sorry using acronyms, but the focus here on the TSI is the student groups. So student groups that have the same indicators that are listed down below, the exact same indicators as CSI. So if they were red, or if they were red plus another color, or red and orange, or they had 5 or more indicators, that were majority of red, they would also fall into the TSI. But when schools are identified at the TSI level, they're looking at the student group. CSI, we were looking at a school level overall. So we do have some schools that met that criteria as well. Unfortunately, they do not have any money coming down from the state to help support them, but that's our job through our process of using our LCAP, our other categorical dollars, and a low-performing schools block grant that we'll be sharing in just a minute. So these are the different categories and the different schools. Paloma is not a Title I school, but it's not, as in the previous slide, it doesn't matter if you're Title I or not Title I. All schools are eligible for this identification should you meet the criteria. And I don't know if you have any specific questions, but we do have a breakdown in the different areas with students with disabilities and what caused them to be red. And that, so for Paloma, the college and career ELA and math for students with disabilities. For Paris High, it was suspension rate, college and career indicators, and for Pinnacotta was chronic absenteeism and ELA. So those were the different subcategories that caused those indicators, those red indicators that put them in the TSI. Similar to what Paris Lake has to do again, this all has to be reflected in their SIPSA, the school plan, so they need to identify those actions and services that will help support those initiatives and efforts individually amongst the school and how they're going to be able to move those indicators to a more positive side. So again, we'll be working, we have already started that work already with the sites through our LCAP leadership and as well as our SIPSA pullout days, and we're working with them and looking at that data. Oh, let me go back, let me see. So I just want to make sure that all the SIPSs will be submitted to you at the June board meeting, so you'll have an opportunity to review those. And then similar to what Dr. Newman had mentioned earlier with CMI, I won't reiterate, it's exactly the same. The district will be awarded $304,308 to help support those initiatives, and I will let Dr. Newman take it home.
So once again, we want to ensure that how we're using this funding is aligning with the services that we have in the LCAP. And so if you look up here, once again, we're focused on professional learning communities, and we think that that's very valuable in regards to teachers working together and really driving the work of student achievement and really organizing them to make those critical decisions. MTSS really is creating a system that provides supports for behavior as well as at their academics on the RTI side, and then also there's some social emotional supports that are embedded in there as well. And then you see up there instructional delivery and research-based practices, and we're really looking at the gradual release model and beginning to roll it out district-wide in terms of training and support for that as well. And then lastly, we have AVID. AVID Right Path is really some focus areas that we've had. We want to continue that work over the next 3 years and really, continue to be very focused on those specific items for the next few years. Okay. And with that, I guess, any questions?
You say, when were the funds going to be available for the schools, starting when?
So these funds are available this year
Okay.
for the low performing. Paris Lake will also receive those funds for this year.
For
as
this
well.
year?
So it's the low performing block grant is a 3-year grant. So
Okay.
you have the access to that $304,000 over the course of 3 years.
So the records for what you're actually spending on is all going to be in the SIPSA?
For the schools, yes. For Paris Lake, it will be.
But
The $304,000 at the district level will be reflected in the LCAP.
in the LCAP?
Yeah.
Okay.
¿En the district LCAP or the site LCAP?
The district LCAP.
The
The sites
district
have their
LCAP.
single plans, or their school plans, their SIPSs.
Mm.
So for Paris Lake, they're required to include a component for their CSI. For our LCAP, there is now a new add-on. I don't know if you've seen your LCAP yet, but there is a new add-on section for CSI and targeted support. So in our LCAP, we have to address how we're supporting the schools. So that's new this year.
Okay, so the support is going to come directly from the district to the sites, either CSI or TSI or ATSI. I just put one is comprehensive, the other one additional, and targeted and additional target.
Yes, so part of that
It's the same thing, everything.
is that collaborative, is that collaboration that we'll have with the sites. But Paris Lake is allocated their own allocation for CSI status.
Okay.
The targeted
do you think it could be possible to upload these documents on a Google form that the board members will have access?
I believe it's already there.
It's already there?
I think I put it in
Okay,
this
I should
afternoon.
have checked it. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yes, I did.
okay. Thank you.
I just
You
have
know,
one,
the direction of my request.
more specifics. I mean, for me, it's a lot of acronyms and a lot of, but more specifics on what these programs are going to be. If I was visiting the site, what would I be looking for different than what you're doing now?
So in regards to professional learning communities, we're organizing all departments in teams, and that basically embedded within that, there's some specific principles that should be guiding the work they're doing. And I don't know how detailed you want me to go, so let me know if I go.
Well, more student-based. What are the students, the direct benefit to the student, what changes for them?
Right, so so the direct benefit to the students for PLCs is that we build clarity around student learning outcomes. So in regards to how we identify what kids are gonna learn and what those learning targets are, also how we're gonna assess kids, and then also what interventions and supports we're gonna provide specifically if kids are not learning. So those are some of the
Specific.
space that we're working in. Then for MTSS, it's really being very specific about identifying what kids are not making it, and then identifying what are the appropriate interventions to support kids. And so that's is set up to systematically do that and not do that randomly.
Okay.
What we should be seeing is increases in whether it's the benchmarks, the assessments, and movement on the dashboard.
Okay, yeah, that's the way to measure. I was just concerned because looking at the suspension reports, they have improved for Paris Lake. Paris Lake is the only school getting this direct funding, so obviously the problem, is showing up on the dashboard. We know it's there. So I just want to, and when will we see the follow-through report? When would be our next update on this?
So we submit an online report March 1st,
Okay.
just kind of sharing what our plan is, and then the follow-up report isn't until year 3, but we anticipate that obviously we'll be reporting back on our status as we go through, and we're sharing our LCAP updates with you as well.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Dr. Newman, what do you know about the proposed change on the accountability system in terms of school climate suspensions? At the federal level, they are trying to make this change. The rationale, and one of the things that I potentially could agree, is that some districts, they are painting the situation in a different color, pink, so everybody's happy, right? Instead of suspending or expelling students that they really should be suspended or expelled, they are not doing it just to look better on this accountability system. So the federal government already noticed that, and this is a lot of us. We know that some districts are doing that. I'm not saying that that is happening here, but in some districts they transfer students from one school to the other one, and they just transferring the problem among themselves. What do you know about that update? What is the status of that proposal?
Well, I think in regards to the update, I think that's been a challenge from the beginning of the initial law that said you had to do other means of correction. And so what we've done here to combat that, we're not just looking at the suspension rate, because like you said, specifically, you can mask a suspension rate by not suspending. That doesn't mean you're not changing behavior on your campus. And so I know what Mr. Bruff is doing specifically is looking not just at the suspension rate, though that is an indicator, but he's looking at what those internal referral rates at that school site, what that's looking like. So when you look at the referral rate and the suspension rates, that's really what you want to look at, but also looking at what are the specific interventions that they're doing on campus, meaning if kids are in that cycle, are we actually providing supports for them? Yeah. And so that's kind of an additional level of data is what they're looking at to ensure that we're not masking suspensions.
Yeah. Yeah, but my question was about the update of the proposed legislation, because all of us, we know about that. And that was the objective of, this was under the Obama administration, right? So that proposed change is under the current administration in order to avoid those potential issues. Have you heard about that? Or if not, that's okay. I just was wondering.
Right, no,
if,
I haven't heard about the legislation, but I more know about the problem you're talking about. That is a challenge.
Yeah.
That's more of what we're trying to do is address the issue.
Yeah, and this legislation was basically supposed, it was supposed to say, okay, we are not going to take in consideration suspension rates in the climate because we know that some districts are doing this, and that. So why are we going to be doing that? So let's be realistic on those situations. So I was wondering on the status of that proposed change by the federal government.
Yeah, but we can do, I can have Mr. Bruff do some research and we can get back to you on it for sure, okay?
And again, this was like the CMI, we want to make sure we're presenting the information to the board to be transparent and clear to our board and to our community that how we're moving forward to deal with this differentiated assistance. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Next item is 12.2, technology update. Mr. Williams, come on down.
I know there's a lot of slides, so I don't need to read off each one, and some of you might be timing this to see how long we go. But I will do my best. Some of this is a repeat from the presentation that we did in October, the presentation we would have done February 2018, and so on and so forth. So for some of you, this will be new. I don't ever use this clicker. Well, there we go. Can you go back in? We're looking for a new executive director that can handle a clicker. All right. So real quickly, a lot of people talk about technology and they talk about what it should be and what we should be doing. But our students who are here are going to inherit a world where technology is everywhere, and it should be necessary and it should be kind of invisible. And the idea behind this topic is that we shouldn't be taking technology out in the classroom and making a big celebration about it, like toot our horns, we're using technology. It should be just something naturally that the students use to organize their lives. And I wanted to start where we left off in October. With this quote about technology is not a tool. It's a tool. It's not a learning outcome. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But there's two pictures here. It's one thing about what technology should be used for students, and then of course our leaders in the district. And so we're not asking our students to create a flip grid. We're not asking our students to create a blog. That's just a thing. That's not moving us over to the other column. But the right answer is we want students to raise awareness. We want them to join conversations. We want them to reflect on their own learning. So we're very careful when we talk about technology use that we're not talking about things on that side of the column. We're talking things on this side of the column that we want students to be able to do. We want them to solve complex problems. The jobs of the future, students are going to have some type of, they need to have some type of mental flexibility to apply what they know to new concepts. And the same thing with our leaders. We shouldn't be asking our leaders to tweet. We should be asking them to build professional learning communities, to build relationships. We shouldn't be asking them to create a spreadsheet. We're asking them to create change. So in a nutshell, the way the technology department works is we're over educational technology and IT. And there's sort of 6 big domains: planning, operations, professional learning, instructional resources, equity and access, and transformation. And I won't go into detail on all of those, but this is sort of a big idea of how we look at our division in technology. And I want to start with planning. So in case you don't know, for new board members, when we first created Scholar Plus, there were some key elements of Scholar Plus. And if you didn't know, Scholar Plus was selected as the name of our program to keep the focus on the learners, to keep the focus on the students, to keep the focus on our goals, and to keep the focus on our desired outcomes. And there are attributes that we want to build into our students, almost like a graduate profile, so to speak. We want our students to leave our district, to be inquisitive, to be research-driven, to be able to have that sort of mental acuity. And that's why we called our program Scholar Plus. And the last quote of this was something that stuck out with us before we even decided to go one-to-one, was in 2010, the National Educational Tech Plan basically in a nutshell said students will have a device to use in and out of school. And this was sort of a directive from the federal government, and we took that to heart. So on the planning, because we're on planning right now, I want you to know we had desired outcomes. We just didn't jump into it on going one-to-one with Chromebooks, and these are some of the desired outcomes. The one I'm extremely proud of is chronologically the last one, that we're providing equitable access to all students, especially those of previously underserved populations, which is the students we have. And so our planning, all of our planning keeps in mind our desired outcomes. We have ongoing planning, so we just didn't rest on our laurels that we did this planning and now everything's working fine and we don't need to keep planning, but we need to keep forecasting. Some of the associations that I have that keep us forecasting is my relationship with Education Week or the K-12 Congress, the Google Education Think Tank, and all these other things, including our District Educational Technology Council, including regular PUHSD planning meetings, intimately connected with all the departments, business services, human resources, and curriculum on all those planning meetings, and technology having a seat at the table. So we're constantly doing this ongoing planning and forecasting. Some examples, some recent examples, because on that slide, you saw that slide before, but some recent ongoing planning and forecasting examples was I'm on our third writing of a blueprint that helps other districts adopt more progressive type of teaching and learning using technology. I have a collaboration with Education Week magazine on current topics and research going on with education. And our work with the Google Education Think Tank, Paris Union High School District is one of the premier think tank members for the Google Education Think Tank. And a lot of the stuff that we work on over there is innovation and workplace culture, and that reflects in the work that we do. And we're also part of the Inland Code Consortium and our commitments to computer science. So in the area of planning, we started out with a plan. We used a lot of work, a lot of research. We created desired outcomes, and we didn't rest on our laurels. We continue to make sure that we're forecasting and using the tools available to us. Before I move on to planning, any questions on that? No, you don't have to. I still have to use the clicker. Operations, right? So Shane, who used to be my assistant director, used to say, the things that we do are not sexy. People don't want to talk about them. They don't want to talk about these things on how they work behind the scenes. They just want it to work. And that's the operations part of it. We make it work, okay? So we started out with 1 gigabit per second from the county. We negotiated, we argued, we cajoled, we threatened to get more bandwidth. And where we're at right now is we have plenty of bandwidth. We have 10 gig. We're looking at making improvements next E-rate cycles. So we're pretty solid behind the scenes on our access points, on our switchgear, and we're constantly improving. So the operations are running really well. Our help desk numbers, in the last 90 days, this is the stats on how we're doing on solving tickets. We have a 99% rating. That means I probably handled the ticket and somebody was mad at me, and so they gave us a bad rating. However, what we do though is we do look at all the ratings on how we did when we close out help desk tickets, and we do evaluate on how we did. And if there is a poor rating, I actually do go out and talk to anybody who rates us and says, what could we do better? Sometimes they say, yeah, I hit the wrong button. That's not what I meant to do. And I don't think they can change it, but that's fine. But as you can see, our techs are very busy. For the last 90 days, they had 10,260 interactions. So that means if they're working on something with Anna and they had to go back 2 or 3 times, that's reflected in our help desk system. So our techs are constantly making sure that they're following up and following through. It's not just closing the help desk ticket; they're actually going back and following through a couple days later. Some of the other statistics that we have is the district's received 15 million emails from the start of the school year, 2.2 million files, 5.3 terabytes of information. I don't even know the number of blocking numerous attacks from the outside. We're constantly making sure that the operations are keeping things going. If I can direct your attention to the graphic in the middle is the teaching and learning, what Charles Newman's department needs to make sure that our teachers are doing, and the assessments with Charles Tippy behind me. He's still here. But the outer bubble is the operations part, that we have high-speed connectivity, that we have data privacy and security, high-speed internet, low-cost devices, home internet access if possible, digital citizenship, and quality resources. That outer bubble is sort of the operations that might be overlooked, the things that people don't realize that are being worked on, that are constantly being worked on. Ongoing improvements, so we constantly have E-rate projects. You'll see E-rate items that come up for the board approval. We're constantly upgrading our switchgear and our storage. When anytime Art and Hector are doing anything, like just today, anytime a wall's got to be cut open or a building has to be moved, we're making improvements, we're moving servers, and we're making sure all that works. We transitioned just recently in the year or so to a single sign-on process that puts all the instructional platforms that they use into one single sign-on type of environment that keeps us secure. We're transitioning to a learning management system, which transition is difficult, but I think we handle that well. And of course, we support all the phased improvements district-wide, all the things that are going on all the campuses. We're in there in the meetings, and we're making sure that the operations and the infrastructure is solid. Any questions on operations? Professional learning is the sort of the third component of what we work on. And I won't read this, but we've just changed the conversation from the why as to the how and creating user experiences. When we first did Scholar Plus, we were showing a lot of people how to click here and click there. We don't focus on that so much anymore. That still needs to be done, but we focus on the why, on why we're doing this. Here's an example of the, was it in October? October PD for professional learning. And then here's a slide in an area Q. There's two pictures of people up there. There's Dr. Freeman and Grant Bennett. This was Inland Area Q, where we had a great showing of teachers who were presenting and also participating in professional development. So there's a shameless plug for two of you up there. So we're moving onto the why, as I said, and we want teachers to be learning experience designers. If I can get anything off of that slide, we want to move teachers away from just being lesson planners to learning experience designers, to taking into account the furniture. Is it collaborative furniture, the way that there's basically no front of the classroom, where students have a station rotation type model to get individualized attention. We want teachers to move to that. Some examples of recent ongoing professional learning. We had a large showing at Inland Area Q. CSCA mentioned training, like training for their security campus supervisors. James and I extremely make sure that all our techs receive all kinds of training and no shortage of opportunities for training. And I actually applaud them when they come to us and say, hey, the county's doing this or Dell's doing that, and they come out and ask for it when they're hungry for training. We really encourage it. We're thinking of implementing like a Saturday training for our techs. We have our monthly ETC meetings, and then the last two would be our tech coaches, right? Our tech coaches who are at every school. They're giving people in-class support. I believe that in-class support is the best kind of professional learning, for you to have a coach work with you on things that you learn. And then I can say, I didn't think about this until recently, but our techs do professional development every day. When they come and see anybody who has a problem, they don't just solve the problem for them. They work through the problem with them and build a certain level of capacity for those people. So every interaction with our tech is another level of professional development that you would get. Any questions on professional learning? Instructional resources. There was a big change recently, and last time I presented on this, I gave you a lot of information about our learning management system and a lot of statistics on our LMS, but we're transitioning LMSs, so there's not a lot of statistics on that. But there are some key things in instructional resources that I do want you to know that are a big development from the last time we presented. So technology can teach critical thinking skills. And I think this is missed sometimes when we talk about technology. So the very first slide that I showed you, where technology is a tool and not a learning outcome, these next couple slides, and I won't read all of them. You can go through and you can read some of the notes that I put here. But technology can teach critical thinking skills, and there's some bullet points there that I won't get into on each of these slides for the event of time. Each of these slides I broke it down a little further. But what I want you to know on these slides, what I want you to know is that every platform that the district adopts, every platform that teachers ask for regarding science or math or English, all should be doing these and teaching these critical thinking skills. Every single one, and every single one should be focused on, the outcome of meeting our goals. So I won't read all those, but because there are some things I want to get to. Here are some quick stats. If you recall, last time I gave you this slide, and it is in your presentation about it. There's a lot of numbers there, but I want you to see this. This was the thing that I pointed out to you last time. Those in yellow are weekends or holidays. Kids are still working on weekends and holidays. You can see Mondays have the highest usage, where we're to 6 or 7,000 original documents created by our students. You realize, well, we have 10,000 students. Why aren't every student creating a new document? But this is a new document. They might be working on old documents. So you can see that our system that we have just doesn't have them working at the school. They're working on the weekends. And you can see directly in February there, the 16th, like it fell off to 200. And so some people were still working, but that was the weekend before ski week, and people were still working. These next couple of slides, I won't go into too much detail, but I did talk about the transition to Canvas. But I wanted you to know an important thing that I haven't presented to you on yet. In one of the recent board agendas, the board approved the gaggle, which is sort of like our self-harm alert system. And I wanted to give you more detail about that because it's important to talk about instructional resources. And it's important that I share with you what we do for instructional resources and the work we do with student services. That's extremely important. But if we're not keeping kids online safe with our devices, then we're doing them a great disservice. So real quickly, every single device goes through our Google domain. We have an on-site web filter. Every Chromebook has GoGuardian. Teachers have an in-class dashboard to see what the kids are doing. We have smart alerts that come in at night, and we have alerts that have student incidents, questionable content, and possible situations. And I'll show you more about that. And the last bullet point was proven results. On all of those things that we do, we've saved lives for students who are reaching out for help. This is a dashboard of one of the systems that we use, and onto the far right would show that there was over a certain amount of time, which was January 1, there were 823 violations. These were kids who were swearing and doing other things like that, and which, hopefully this system will have them quit swearing so much using our tools. Questionable content could be, what's going on here? Where'd they get this picture? We need to look into this a little further. And that gets dealt with by site admin and discipline. And then there's possible student situations, and it's possible. It doesn't mean it's necessarily 100%, but those possible student situations are students who've reached out for help, who might be depressed, suicidal, or really looking to get help. And I can tell you that on those, we've made a meaningful impact, including sending the police to do home visits where parents were very appreciative because they didn't know how far the student was reaching out. On the other side is just how many things are reviewed. It reviews everything. It goes through it just scans through emails and pictures and all that stuff, and we keep them safe online. Any questions about? Yes.
I've been thinking about one question, by the way. I would like a couple 8x10s of me. As a father with the daughters in high school, there's one thing about the use of technology that drives me nuts. I mean, it's a wonderful tool. I loved it as a teacher. I love it as a parent. However, one thing that seems to happen, has happened with all of my daughters, is that when an assignment is due, you'd be surprised how often it's due Friday at midnight. And then I've got a daughter who comes home from a football game or something and is trying to desperately get it done by that time, where they're not going back to school until 7:30 on Monday. Why the heck is that thing set up to say, if you're doing it after midnight on Friday, it's late? And that's one thing that sometimes with the use of technology, we kind of overlook a couple of things. And I know that, to quote a famous soon-to-be in the future engineer, the more complicated the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the sink. That was by Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott, by the way. I find that, we're going to have these kinds of little glitches, and I'm not sure if that's something that is innate in the program, or is it something that the teacher is not aware of, or what?
That's a great question, and I think it could be diagnosed on many things. I could tell you that when working with coaches and others, I will look into it and talk about, if you're doing an authentic assessment, why does it need to be done Friday at midnight? Also, as a teacher, I can tell you, if kids could do all your assignment at the last minute, you gave them too much time, right? So if they're doing everything at the last minute and they're able to do everything at the last minute and get a good grade, you've given them too much time as a teacher anyway. So it could possibly be a lot of default settings on, they put in the assignment in the LMS and they just default it Friday at midnight.
But you just mentioned my other question, and that's when you're talking about the transition to the Canvas learning management system. With our cooperating districts, are they or are they not using the same LMS? And if not, does it really matter?
I would say, A, it doesn't matter, and here's why it doesn't matter. We should be teaching students to be resilient on platforms, that they shouldn't be so invested in one platform that when technology changes, they can't change with the times. If you look at all the platforms who were raised and born in the original computer age, all of those platforms have changed. Windows, Microsoft, they have all changed. And so if you have students invested in one platform and they can't transition those skills into another platform, we're doing them a disservice. They need to be able to go into different platforms without much effort. However, I can tell you that Paris Union High School District has been a leader in adopting educational technology, and people would adopt what we've been adopting. In this case, the teachers chose to switch from one LMS to the Canvas LMS for numerous reasons, and I do have a slide on that. Some of those reasons are that it has things like grade pass back. So if as a teacher, if you grade something in this platform, that platform, this platform, or that platform, you can sync that to your Infinite Campus gradebook, and all those grades will be in one place. So 2 parts. I believe that people will transition away from the current LMS that we have. We don't think that's going to be supported in the future. Last, California State Community College is 100% adopted Canvas LMS. This is the LMS they use at every community college in the state of California.
As long as I've got the floor, I could probably wait till the end, but I might forget. Having a daughter who has transitioned over to the Scholar Plus, I would like to say that I just think this is absolutely wonderful use of technology, that a youngster who did not function real well under that structure of a regular high school is flourishing under the way we have it set up for now. And I wish that I had known about this when I was in high school, because I could have told you half a dozen of my friends that could have used it. So I just appreciate that particular tool that's being provided.
Right, and the concepts behind our Scholar Plus Online Learning Academy and giving those students a different way to complete their work and representations of their work is something that we want to offer for all of our students.
Yeah. I just wanted to add also, I think this is excellent, right? And one question to supplement Dr. Freeman's question in terms of the deadline to submit the assignments, I think the other question is, when was the assignment assigned? If it was assigned the same day or the night before, then yes, there is an issue. But if it was assigned 2 weeks before, right, then is something reasonable. Then the teachers, some teachers, based on conversations that I have had with some of them, is some of them they use the weekend to look into those assignments, to grade them. So that would be one potential reason why it's midnight. And it has to be a time, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be midnight exactly, but that might be a potential reason why it's Friday at midnight, so they have time on Monday when the teachers go back, when the students go back to class, they can see their assignments, how they did. But if it was assigned 2 or 3 weeks in advance, giving them Saturday and Sunday, one more weekend, is not going to be making a big difference for the student.
One of the advantages of technology is to get feedback to the students in a timely manner. So as an English teacher, if they turned in essays to me and I have to grade all those essays, I'm not going to give them feedback in a timely manner. And giving students immediate feedback or timely feedback is extremely important, because my experience with students when I gave them the grade on the essay and I got that grade, they were done. They weren't going to look at that again. They weren't going to read it again. They weren't going to read my comments. So using these platforms and using these tools to give more immediate feedback and timely feedback is extremely important in lesson design. On this is another slide on student safety. This is a different platform that we use. We use a cocktail of platforms. The reason why we use two main different platforms is the first one I showed you goes comprehensively through their Google Drive. This platform that is our filter, it filters web traffic, right? So there's no system that does both. But this gives us reports, and as you can see, there was currently no smart alerts. That was a fluke. That was so weird. When I took the picture, it said you're up to date. There's currently no smart alerts, because usually there's a smart alert of a kid searching things that might not be appropriate. I can tell you anecdotally, some of them are really interesting, because these kids that take psychology as seniors, they search from some really interesting things, and it does trigger that. And then we see that, well, this person's searching like every disorder known to man. Most likely, you know, they're either a hypochondriac or they have Holly Santa Stevens class. And those are two of their choices. So, equity and access, as we kind of wrap this up, is speaking of Dr. Freeman's daughter and using Scholar Pluses, it provides equity, right? It provides equity for students who previously didn't have those type of opportunities. And so here's why Scholar Plus is important, because it gives all students access to information. It gives them to collaborating in new ways. It gets them to create and using creation tools that they otherwise didn't have. They can publish, it's a force multiplier, and it creates student autonomy, and that's important, and that's why doing that is important. I won't go into detail, but this is Charles Tippy's world. This was equity and access and assessment. Assessments have to do with timing, accessibility, having pathways that are adaptive, not just linear, giving immediate feedback in real time, and item types that are enhanced rather than just multiple choice, and technology can do that. Technology can do all these things that we discussed earlier when I talked about learning, when I talked about educational resources, and I can go into a little bit of detail on that. It also closes the digital divide, which is extremely important for our students, the opportunity divide and the digital divide. This is an example. I wish Rachel was still here. This is a recent development. Every high school has a Scholar Bar where the students, periods 1 through 7, work at the Scholar Bar and help other students on their Chromebooks. So we're now working at PALS to create their own Scholar Bar. James and my tech Brandon are in there, and they've got the initial stages of the Scholar Bar at PALS, where the idea to provide equity for these kids is for them to get real world understanding of how to repair Chromebooks, repair devices, how to work efficiently, how to track their work and keep track of things. That's what we're doing at PALS right now. The last thing, I won't go into too much detail on this because we'll just move forward. Equity access to computer science, right? The state of California now allows computer science to count in high school, to count as an elective, math credit, or science credit. It just so happens that you have an information item at the bottom of today's agenda on Board Policy 6000 on allowing computer science to count as a year of math credit. So why this is important is here's Board Policy 6146 that California allows the school boards to write that in their policy that math can count as a category C elective. Any questions about that? I don't want to confuse you, but it is on your information items for Board Policy 6000 today. But what also happened is that the UC systems have now finally come to the point where they're accepting computer science as a Area D computer science for science. All of our courses that we currently use, they're code.org courses, those have been submitted to UC Doorways to count as science credit by code.org. So now just think of computer science classes that could be taken for many reasons. You could be taking it for math credit. You could be taking it for science credit. You could be taking it as an elective. You could be taking it because you want to know about computer science and that's what you want to do after high school. So now we've created this energy for students to take computer science. And why that's important is that there were, at the time I locked down this presentation, there were almost 80,000 current openings in the computer science field, but we only have less than 6,500 graduates from computer science programs. This is important. And also I can tell you that the AP stats on computer science, only 30% of California schools offer AP computer science. All of our high schools offer AP computer science. And so we're one of the 30. And of those students who take AP computer science, minorities are and women are underrepresented. And we need to fix that. And we need to fix that. And one of the ways to fix that is by offering it for multiple pathways and representation in the teaching ranks. I won't go into that. So quickly on transformation, classrooms should be modern. They should have no fixed front of the classroom. They should allow for student autonomy. They should move students away from being consumers to creators. This is Mr. Hayes on how he runs his classroom, where most of the students are always standing, they're always learning, they're always hands-on. And fitting the pieces together, for me, like I showed you on the other one, I need to make sure that everything's accessible. I need to make sure that we have the devices. I need to make sure that we have the connectivity and the resources. And then Grant Bennett loves this quote from John Dewey: if we teach today's students as we taught them yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. And in a nutshell, that sort of wraps up how we're sort of breaking the model here. I think that's my last slide. I won't go into those. I'll just move on. I know Kirk's checking his watch.
One thing that I have talked with a few educators about that has to do with technology and use of it, because you're right, it is a tool. It's not the curriculum. As a tool, and I believe that it would fit in very well with Steve Krashen's effective filter theory on second language learning, where when you can lower the stress level for the individual, you increase the learning. And I just really believe that is so true with the proper use of the technology as a tool to deliver and to receive the learning.
Yeah, I even argue against myself when I say it's a tool, not a learning outcome. And the reason why I then, once I've convinced you that it's a tool, and I try to convince you it's more than a tool, because I want you to believe that it is a force multiplier in the classroom. As a teacher and with 36 students, it was very difficult for me to get individualized instruction to students with many needs. Teaching reading intervention, and I had students who could have been reading at the 3rd grade level all the way up to the 8th grade level in my sophomore English class. It was very difficult for me to provide all these individualized, personalized learning experiences for them. But luckily, in my classroom, the district had got me about 5 or 6 desktops that I had in the back of the room. And I was able to use that to multiply my force, to be able to give them an individual type of experience if they needed to practice spelling, if they needed to practice grammar, if they needed to do research. So it is a tool, and it's not a learning outcome. I, as a teacher, need to make sure that I provide those learning outcomes, but it is a force multiplier for teachers in the classroom. Teachers are not irrelevant under this system. They're more relevant because they can help the students go deeper than they've ever gone before and give them that individual attention. So that's, I don't normally say that in the beginning, but in the end, I let you know that it is a force multiplier for the teacher.
Mr. Williams, I just want to expand a little bit on what Mr. Stafford said a few minutes ago. He asked a question to Dr. Newman. How does this transfer, he was talking about PLCs, right, into the classroom? If I go and see the classroom and visit a school, what I'm going to see different, right? In terms of the PLCs, I think Dr. Newman explained and expanded that is more subjective, right? In terms of identifying the instructional strategies or the standards that the students need to be, that they need support. But in this case, I would ask the same question. What are we going to see when we go to the classroom in terms of technology that is more tangible, more observable? And I noticed something that when you were explaining that you were saying, this is what should be happening in the classroom, this is what should be. So I'm looking forward to the moment when we get, when you make a presentation, this is what is happening, this is what you will see if you go tomorrow. And I understand that if we visit a school, not in every single classroom that is going to be happening some learning using the tools, but in a significant percentage, right, based on the training and everything that we are doing. So I think that was a very good question in terms how does this transfer into the daily practice. So we are looking forward whenever we have the opportunity to visit the school and the classrooms to see what you are sharing with us in action. Right. Seeing in the classroom and the students and the teachers guiding the students using those tools.
I agree with you, and I agree with your statements. And one of the things that I can tell you is that what the best of what is going on our campus is shared in the superintendent's update, the part on instructional. And if you click through that, and I can share it with anybody else also, if you click through that, there are links on there that are links to social media posts about what's going on our classroom. So the best examples of teachers using technology, the best examples of a blended classroom, not just sitting in front of the computer for 55 minutes, that's not what we're talking about. The best example of those blended learning opportunities show up at the instructional technology part of the superintendent's update. But what I would want to see is a classroom that is blended, that is using technology when appropriate, and not trying to force it into a situation that's not appropriate. In some cases, using a piece of paper and calculating and doing some linear algebra might be the best way to do it. But then being able to take that linear algebra and plugging it into Desmos and actually seeing that formula actually creates something. It creates a parabola, or it creates something, and then when you move it, it actually changes the calculation. So in the best of worlds, you would see a blended classroom where teachers are appropriately using the technology when needed, and then going to regular great teaching when that's appropriate.
And I can see that we are seeing a successful program here because we are looking also, not everything is going to be observable in the classroom. We are seeing the data of the number of projects, assignments that the students have been turning in through the computer and through the system. So you present even during the weekends. Yeah, and I know for a fact that even this week, students continue to turn in assignments even though there are no classes. So my point is that not everything is going to be the outcome of the implementation of technology in the classroom is not just there in the classroom. It transfers to the homes and at different times, even at midnight. Right?
It does. Yeah, that in our classrooms we create a formal learning environment. But don't ever underestimate the informal learning opportunities that are presented using technology, right? So in our classroom, we have this formalized learning environment, but don't underestimate the informal opportunities that technology provides. Thank you.
Are we timed out? Item 12.3, facilities financing presentation.
Okay, well, I am super excited to do this presentation. My friends in the peanut gallery over here have told me I'm limited to 3 minutes, but I hope you took note of the length of the other presentations. I will definitely not be under 3 minutes. You know, it's funny because I've heard this from so many people, Hector too, like, you guys, you made that happen. That's good, thank you. I was gonna ask you to move forward, but then you just did it.
I use technology.
Oh, good, you're, okay. All right, wow.
It's informal.
I turned back to look because I was talking about Hector. Thank you, Scott. I have a really good team I'm going to introduce you guys to in a minute. But you know, Grant, Hector, and I, others, we keep getting asked, like, why are you guys so busy? Why are you here so much? Why, you know, what's going on? Like things should be slower now that Measure W passed, right? Are you kidding me? Like, no. So from the financing element, we've got to we already passed it. We need to now sell with the best strategy possible, which that's what we're here to talk to you tonight, $250 million of bonds. And so I brought many of the team members here tonight because I wanted to introduce them to you, go over the strategy with you, because again, it's $250 million of bonds that you as a board are entrusting Mr. Bennett and I, along with the team that we've put together, with to present to you our recommendations for how we structure this financing. So I know you guys keep hearing me say I'm super excited. I was super excited all through Measure W, and then, you know, we all lived through the low and then the high, and I'm definitely still on the high. But we have been working pretty much since the minute we knew it passed on what's the best strategy going to be. So I'm really excited to present that to you tonight. Please know that this is not like a one-time deal. It's not like we're going to present it to you tonight and then you're never going to see us again. There's actually going to be a lot of board action that's going to need to be taken. And so tonight it is intended to be an overview. I'm going to do the presentation tonight when I introduce them to you in a minute, because I have a slide for that to explain all of their roles. When we work through each of the next board actions, I'll explain each of the financings to you. Members of the finance teams will get much more detailed into the presentation, so don't feel tonight if something's like, you know, you've not seen something like this before. I mean, we don't expect you to be the same level of expertise as we are in facilities financing, but we're going to have lots of board meetings to go through all of this. So yes, friends, that means I will have lots of presentations coming up. Sorry about that. So to start with the overview for tonight, just a real quick historical review on facilities planning. We're going to go over the priority facilities projects. I'm going to do my formal introductions. We're going to talk most importantly about the facilities financing plan. I want to give you a little bit of background about CFD 92-1 because it's an important element within the strategy. And then the components and the tentative schedules for each of the three components of the financings we're going to be talking about. And then we'll go through next steps. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like an overview.
Sounds like an overview. Good. Okay. So going back to 2009 and 10, we did our initial master planning in the district. Then that led us into Measure T in 2012. In 2017, we updated those master plans. And as you know, on July 25th of 2017, we had a board study session. It was a lengthy study session because there was a lot of things to go over, but the highlights from that study session is you as a board gave approval of what we've been calling the priority projects and the direction to proceed in the planning for those, and you gave us the authorization to study the feasibility of a local bond, which then of course led to Measure W, which passed in 2018. Yay. So, the Measure W priority projects, of course, are High School 4, the Paris High School completion, and then the new gymnasium at CMI. You guys are all familiar with that, but I love throwing those graphics up there. The next time we show the graphics, though, I just want to point out those buildings that are in blue at Paris High School they're almost done being fully rendered. So we're going to be able to see what the whole campus looks like. But this is a financing presentation, so I will stay away from Hector's area. And then one of the other projects that you approved in that 2017 study session was the Paloma Valley High School facilities improvements, and that was the 10 classroom addition, and as well as the stadium entrance, ticket booth, concessions, and restrooms, creating a new entrance for the stadium. And that project is currently underway. I tease Hector and say it rained, last week it rained because he poured footings. And so whenever he digs a trench or pours a footing, it rains. And, you know, that's just how it works in construction. He needed a boat to access his construction trailer last week. But so there were 4 priority projects. 3 of them were funded through Measure W. So to fund all of those projects, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of participants that are on our financial team. And that's not just to give people stuff to do. It's a big deal when you're out selling bonds on the capital market. So I just want to go through the rules and introduce them as they're here. So obviously we have the school district under the authority and approval of the board. Mr. Bennett and I, and then Alicia Fogarty and Hector Gonzalez are part of the school district finance team. I'm actually having a really fun time because neither Hector or Alicia, and actually Grant in his current role have been able to have the fun opportunity of selling bonds. So I'm having fun mentoring our in-house people in doing this. We have our financial advisor, who's Scott Smith right here. You've met Scott before. Scott provides independent advice to the district, and that's real important because there are financial advisors out there that operate in dual capacities, and that's, in my opinion, not a good idea. He needs to be an independent advisor to the district in regards to the structure and the pricing of the different bonds that we're going to be selling. We have our facilities consultant that everybody knows, Dr. Good. He assists in the development of the financing plan as well and its execution, and make sure that it's in conjunction with the developed master plan that you guys have all seen, and then of course those priority projects. We have our bond underwriter, which is Stiefel Nichols. Dawn Vincent is here. She's the managing director. You've probably seen Dawn here maybe before. And so they have a really critical role as well. They're a financial intermediary in structuring and marketing the bonds and accessing the capital market, also ultimately placing the bonds with investors. That probably didn't tell you a whole lot with me saying that, though. So they're very good at what they do. And so when they look at all of the bonds that we have to sell, they are working with the team, with Scott. They're deciding the best time to be on the market. They're forecasting interest rates, but the marketing is a critical piece. So, I'm just going to use easy numbers. We're selling $100 million of bonds. They're the ones that are actually talking with with Wall Street, essentially, the capital markets. Who do we have out there that are going to be our likely investors for these bonds? Should we break them? Are we going to sell $100 million to one investor? No, probably not. They're going to break them up into small components, large components, high yield, low yield, long term, short term, based on, so that we can sell with the very best interest rate. So it's a win-win on both sides. So they have a real critical role, as does Scott, our financial advisor, packaging the bonds. So we have investors who are willing to buy those bonds, and so we have I really do think we have the best people for that. We have Bond Counsel and Disclosure Counsel, Kerrigan Bennett from Stradling and a bunch of other partners, but this is the one we care about, Kerrigan Bennett. He is our bond counsel, and so he is responsible for drafting the financing documents, providing a tax opinion that the interest payments are exempt from federal and state taxation. That's important to potential bond buyers. And then they also are going to serve as disclosure counsel, which is drafting the offering statement to the potential investors. It ends up being a preliminary official statement so that investors can look through our finances and decide, are these bonds that we want to invest in. Oops, I hit a button. So we also have our special tax administrator, and because of one of the components of our financing having to do with the CFDs from Koppel and Gruber, did you move forward? He's kind of sitting in the back because he's sick, so he's staying away because we got important stuff to do and he can't get everybody else sick. But Doug Floyd from Koppel and Gruber Public Finance, their role is to administer our CFD tax collection. They monitor the revenues, they manage the delinquencies, and that's going to be important when we talk about the certificates of participation. There's a bond paying agent. They're the trustee for the bond. We use the U.S. Bank currently. They ensure that the debt service is paid and that the funds are transferred appropriately. So that's their role. They're basically a trustee for the bond. There's a rating agency. In this case, because we're selling currently such a large amount of bonds, we are going to do a presentation in person to both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, their rating agencies. And so that'll be our opportunity to present our financial picture in the district in hopes of getting a higher credit rating, lower interest rates, better for the district. So that's the rating agency. Perhaps we might use a bond insurer. That's another intermediary who would provide a credit enhancement. We would only use that if the proposed fees to have that insurer outweigh, what we would, it's a cost benefit analysis. And then there's the county who enrolls and collects the taxes to pay both the bond and the CFD taxes. So I know that was a mouthful, but I just thought it was really, really important that you understand every single person on the team has a very specific role, and I think we have put together a very good team to make sure that we're doing the very best with the money that your constituents have entrusted you with by passing Measure W and previous to that Measure T. So now let's get to our financing plan. So we have 3 different components to our financing plan. You've seen a table like this before. Extra points if anybody can point out how it's different than before, but I'm going to go through the different financing. So first we're going to do our certificates of participation. That'll be paid from the residual revenues from the CFD 92-1 special tax revenues. The timing for that for closing, which essentially means the money comes, right after that, is May of 2019, and that's approximately $29 million. We have our 2018 election Measure W. That is, as you recall, a single series issuance of $148 million. We estimate the timing for that to close in June of 2019. And then I had a very lengthy paragraph in the end of December weekly update about why we were going to be recommending waiting until February of 2021 to sell Series C from Measure T, and that's so we can access hopefully $75 million, maybe more. So the approximate total, as I've said before, we've got $250 million. There between all of the financing. So what I wanted to, so nobody gets the extra point. Well, does anybody know what's different about this table from last time, besides Mr. Bennett? The dollar amounts are different, and they're higher, and higher is better. And so the certificates of participation, the last time we talked to you about these dollars, we were estimating $25 million. But again, because we've got a really good financial team and a team of strategists really put together, when we go through the different steps of this financing, you're going to see that you'll have a presentation at the next board meeting, and then you'll do some approvals and that sort of thing. But it's actually going to be a financing for a total of $32.5 million, because what we're doing is we're going to be refunding some certificates of participation from 2007 that will allow us to extend out those payments so that we have a larger project fund of $29 million. So we're gaining about $4 million. There's actually 700 new homes that Doug is analyzing right now that were just added to the tax roll. So that number could go up to $30 million. I mean, that's $1 million. We could definitely use that for some contingency and maybe some other things we'll talk about down the road. The other thing that has changed, when we talked in 2017 at the study session, and then when we talked in 2018, we had another study session when we were giving you all the pros and cons of whether we do Measure W or not. That Series C, of course we were going to issue it earlier, would have been $55 million. What we're looking at now is, and I'm going to go through why this is a little bit later, is about $75 million, and that's actually on the low end. And there's a reason there, but really happy that we're able to access more dollars. All of you by now I know are familiar with my dumb analogies, one being cake and icing, right? So it's going to allow us to start talking about icing or frosting, at some point in the future, right? One of the things with Measure W we want to be very, very careful of is only talking about the projects that we knew that we could afford, right? So that we weren't making false we weren't being hopeful when we talked with the community. We weren't counting on state funds, that sort of thing. So when you start adding up, an additional maybe $4 or $5 million here, an additional $20 million, there. I think you saw in a recent Friday update, we probably will be awarded 2 $3 million grants for CTE at Paris High School. that starts adding to the pot. In the January governor's proposal for next year's state budget, Governor Newsom is taking a different stance than Governor Brown on releasing the Prop 51 state dollars. I don't think it looks like we will be in that first round of release, but maybe the one after that. So Fred and I talk all the time. It's like, when do you think we'll get the state money? And we just, the crystal ball just isn't that accurate. First of all, it's just a proposal for the budget, but maybe 3-ish years, maybe $40 to $60 million. That's all. We're starting to talk about a lot of icing here, now, and so that's exciting. When you see this 2019 certificates of participation, just remember it's not going to be 29 million. It's going to be something like 32.5 million because of that refunding. We do refundings quite a bit. You'll see in a minute. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on CFD 92.1, just if you're not familiar. So it was, and this is typically not how CFDs are formed. By the way, this one's a little bit different. It was created by basically a voter election, just sort of like Measure W was. It was placed on the ballot to finance school facilities. It doesn't include any joint financing arrangement. Typically, like in actually at our last board meeting, he approved a JCFA with EMWD, so that's a joint financing of payments through developers. That's typically what CFDs are. But this CFD contains 32,000 acres, of which there are approximately 22,000 residential units in remaining undeveloped property. It covers basically the Menifee portion, and you can see the other areas, some portions of Murrieta, Lake Elsinore, etc. And so CFD 92.1, it's a bear. It's a bear to manage, but it is a really large CFD, and as you can see, it's going to provide us an important financing component. At the time of the formation, it was formed in 1992. I wasn't here. I was in school, though. And so I don't know why they put a debt authorization limit of $40 million at the time, because, again, I wasn't here. But nonetheless, there was an indebtedness limit of $40 million on those CFDs. In 2011, the district issued revenue bonds up to the remaining amount of that authorization. And those were secured by special tax revenues that were generated by CFD 92.1. So, yes.
I'm sorry, I've heard about certificates of participation for a couple of decades. And what I heard, what we experienced was not good. What is the difference between certificates of participation and a general obligation bond?
Okay, so certificates of participation, it's a lease financing. Wait a minute, I forgot to say this. Anybody on my team wants to interject or correct me, you get up here. So jump up here if I'm doing this wrong. So certificates of participation is a leased financing. You have to have a leased asset, so something that backs the financing. And they're generally backed, actually they're always backed by the general fund. And so that can be dangerous if you don't have other funds to actually pay that debt. There's nothing wrong with school districts that issue certificates of participation with intentions to pay that debt out of the general fund. What the difference, to answer your specific question, the difference between a GO bond is the general obligation bond that's voted on by the voters, like Measure T and Measure W. That debt is paid by tax revenue that's placed on the tax roll, whereas a certificates of participation debt is paid directly from the district. Did that help?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Can anybody else do a better job? Come on, Kerrigan.
So certificates of participation, it's a different financing tool, obviously, than bonds, and it allows you to issue debt that doesn't require voter authorization because it fits into a recognized exception to the constitutional debt limit that's embodied in the common law, the case law of the state. So it's a pretty common tool, used when you need to, because otherwise you wouldn't want to burden the general fund. In this case, we're structuring it so that it can really be paid from these excess special taxes. I'm not sure what you might have heard in the past about, COPs.
I taught in Valverde, does that tell you?
Velvet, no, I didn't realize that, but I think in some time ago, about 10 years ago and beyond, 12 or 13 years ago, it was a tool that was used often in a variable rate structure. This is a more complicated structure in which you actually get a lower interest rate because the holders of those certificates have the right to put them back to you, to sell them. And that's supported. The money to purchase those back comes from a bank that you sign a contract with. Sounds like a good thing. Often in the short term, it ends up being a low interest rate. But you have to keep paying that back to the bank to keep that facility open. Those contracts with the banks are a shorter term than the ultimate financing. So you're exposed to some risk in renegotiating that contract. And if the bank's credit declines, the certificates are worth less, and then you still have to buy them back. What we're talking about is a fixed rate certificates of participation financing. Once they're sold, they're sold. And we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to keep negotiating with a bank or figure out how to get bondholders their money back.
Now, the other question I had was you keep using the word refunding. I know, when I get a refund, that's one thing, but I don't think that's what you mean.
Sure. Go ahead. Let's hear from everybody.
It's Scott Smith, CSG Advisors. It's just another phrase for refinancing.
Okay,
Yeah, same thing.
thank you.
That's who we need to do the whole presentation. He's like short, you know. Short.
What CFP stand for?
Oh, Community Facilities District. Okay. Okay, so we good on so
Yeah,
short answer to your question, we are
No,
not doing what you are referring to in
it helps.
Valverde.
It helps because I've.
And I'm
every
sorry
time
to
in-
Darren for saying
for
that,
years
or
in the
and those
past when I
before
would
him.
hear that.
I know he's not there anymore, but so okay. So so where was I at? So so normally with community facilities districts, you issue bonds against them, and then the CFD revenues pays that debt. We can no longer issue any more bonds against the CFDs because we have already reached that 40 million. Yet we have residual revenues. I have a chart I'm going to show you. So the approximate $29 million that I was talking about earlier in the COPS financing, while it's technically and legally going to be backed by the general fund, meaning if for some reason the CFD revenues can't pay the debt, the general fund would have to. But I'm here to tell you there is no risk of that happening. I'm going to show you a chart that I know it's small, but you do have it printed in front of you. But the very first column is the tax year that we're talking about. The second column is the projected tax revenues for that year. And then the third column is the debt from the existing 2015 revenue bonds. Remember I told you that in 2011 we bonded against the CFDs? Well, we refunded or refinanced those in 2015, which is why the table that Doug actually created for us for this presentation shows our annual debt obligation. So what's important to note is the blue column, and those are residual revenues. And I like to think of those, if we don't do something with those dollars, it's almost just like keeping our money under the mattress. Like if you think about it on simpler terms, if I was, say, a first-time or a potential first-time home buyer, and I was going to buy a $300,000 house, I wouldn't rent in an apartment until I could save up $300,000. I would take out a loan, right? And so it's going to cost me some interest and that sort of thing, but it allows me to achieve my goal, sooner of being a homeowner. And we know that there's, benefits, of being a homeowner, of course. It's really not too different when we're talking about school facilities. So we could sit and we could just watch those dollars accumulate. And then once they accumulate to a large enough amount, we could say, okay, Hector, what could you build us for, $29 million?
Does it have to be used toward facilities?
Has to be used towards has to be used towards facilities. That's an excellent clarification. So what we are proposing to do is sell a certificates of participation because we cannot sell a CFD revenue bond because we are maxed out. It would be backed by the general fund. However, the CFD residual revenues would pay that debt. So going for facilities, paid by facilities money. So that's how that would be structured. Any questions there before I go over the schedule?
No, I'm just getting a headache. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I know. That's why we're breaking this into 3 different board presentations, and there's multiple
No, that's all
components
right.
to
Go
each
ahead.
board presentation. But we want to make sure, I know you guys have been very complimentary, tonight on a number of things as it relates to, things in my world, and I thank you for that, but I want to make sure, and Grant as well, I want to make sure Grant's comfortable, of course, but Grant and I want to make sure that the 5 of you are very comfortable with what we are proposing, because it is a lot of money, so that's why we're spending this time, and I'll probably end up going longer than Joe even talked. So the tentative 2019 certificates of participation, March 15th, our finance team would be reviewing the draft documents. March 20th, I have the dates in bold that are board meeting dates. All of the dates are important, but March 20th, we would do a much more specific board presentation. Though you guys asked a lot of wonderful questions relating to CFDs and COPS, you might have made it really easy on Doug for next month. The week of April 8th, approximately, we plan to go to San Francisco and do a credit rating presentation again to try to lower our interest rates. April 17th, again, one of your board meetings, that's when all of the financing documents would be presented to the board for approval. So we wanted to, again, backing up, make sure we're talking to you tonight about it, we're talking to you at the next board meeting about it, so that you're very comfortable with making your vote in approving all of those financial documents on April 17th. Then on April 24th, a preliminary official statement, or POS we call it, would be printed and posted. And that's when our finance team, I want to say really gets to work, but it's already been a lot of work, up to then. But that's when we're pre-pricing and pricing. Stiefel Nichols is doing that work, and then we would close May 13th. And so that's essentially when we're out on the open capital markets, finding those investors. If any of you are interested, Don, we can probably get them access so that they could watch that. I think it's super fun to watch the bonds be sold and that kind of thing. Everybody thinks, well, I do geek out on this stuff, so I apologize for geeking out, but so, what can I say? So that would be the tentative schedule there. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the second component, which is Measure W. Remember, that was a single series issuance. That's $148 million. There is a statutory bonding capacity that we need to talk about, which is 1.25%. You can kind of follow this chart here, but there's, if you look at our assessed valuation, $16.8 billion, you multiply 1.25%. Gives us, $210 million, which is our gross bonding capacity, but you have to subtract our outstanding bonds, leaves us a net bond issuance capacity of $107.6 million. But we want to sell $148 million. So what are we left with? I know. So what are we left to do? I'm so glad Vicki stayed. I'm going to talk about you now. Now you have to pay attention. You weren't paying attention. I caught you. Oh, okay. So under state law, if we want to exceed that 1.25%, all we have to do is apply to the State Board of Education for a waiver to issue new debt if that outstanding debt exceeds the 1.25%. By issuing all of the $148 million, which of course we need to do to be able to complete Liberty High School in a single phase. If we don't issue all of the debt now, construction costs are just going to continue to rise. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why, we want to issue all of the bonds right now. It only increases up to 1.49%, and actually only for 2 years, and then it goes back down under the 1.25%.
And what does the state usually allow if you ask for the waiver?
I don't know, what kind of maximum have you guys seen? You've seen 4.5%? Yeah.
So we're well within the tolerance.
Oh,
that
yes.
they usually allow.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. So there's a condition, there's a lot of conditions to apply for the waiver, but one of them is that the application indicate whether or not the waiver was considered and supported by the Bond Advisory Committee and your local bargaining units. So I want to, CSEA left, but I want to thank, I have your letter here, Vicki, I just want to show. So we worked with our bargaining units and we worked with our Citizens Oversight Committee in explaining this. I sent a pretty detailed, probably boring letter first. We talked about it, and then we got letters of support from all three of those organizations. So we had that piece to be able to complete, actually, let me go to my, so anyway, I have a thank you on there to PSCA, CSCA, and to their COC who are in support. So, your printed version has the wrong agenda item number because you guys pulled an item, but I did go ahead and change it on here. But so the waiver request is action item 1411 tonight. So there's a resolution that you'll be asked to approve so that we can then tomorrow actually go ahead and submit that waiver to the State Board of Education. March 20th, we'll be back again, remember, would be the required board meeting for information regarding AB 182. The reason I say it's a required board meeting was it 2012 AB 182 passed, I believe? Ish? We'll go with ish. There was a new law, AB 182, that passed around 2012 that requires boards receive certain information before they make decisions on passing bonds. There was a lot of essentially negative press happening that, boards were just, pushing buttons, to approve. So it requires that we as the finance team give you information about SIBs and CABs and debt ratios, and I'm using a lot of acronyms.
We went through all this with Measure T on Series B.
4 presentations. So we're not going to do 4. So I used a lot of acronyms, but we're going to talk to you about current interest bonds, SIBs, and CABs, capital appreciation bonds, which sometimes get a bad reputation, but we'll go through a full explanation of that with debt ratios and how we plan to structure the Measure W bonds. And then you'll also see a first reading of the district issuance resolution, which Kerrigan's firm will draft. But again, this is a repeat from the last one. We're going to do the presentation jointly for both of the bond sales, the credit rating presentation. And then on April 17th at that board meeting would be the second reading of the district issuance resolution, and then the financing documents would be presented to you for board approval. May 8th is when we expect, they haven't announced their date yet, but they meet every other month, and we're hearing it's going to be May 8th as the expected date for CDE to approve the waiver of the debt limitation. And then, just like before, we have a schedule. We'd put out a preliminary official statement. We would pre-price and price, and then close those bonds in June. So now we've gone through 2 of the 3 elements. Here's where I think it gets fun, and Don, you might have to help me out a little bit with some of this. So, little recap on Measure T. We sold Series A in August of 2013 for $35 million. Series B we sold for $40.4 million in November of 2015. And the reason I want to go through this chart that's here is why we're recommending that we wait until 2021 to sell Series C is because it increases our bond sale to maximize that full $30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. But the other thing that it does that I think is a real nice plus for our community members, rather than selling Measure T and Measure W all at the same time, so that they see more T and all of W added to their taxes, it's going to keep their T the same. Actually, T will continue going down as assessed valuation, more homes are built, while W is added. So it kind of, puts those new taxes in staggering just a little bit. So that will help our community out. It'll also help us out. And what you see here, this chart, is our estimated tax rate. So if you look at they're kind of showing up as the same color blue, but the bottom or lighter color blue at the bottom is Series A. And so you can see by year, the dollar amount per 100,000 that we're actually taxing, each homeowner. And then when we went out for Series B in orange, we layer or stack, the other terminology used, that debt on top of Series A. So we're staying under that dotted line that you can see there, correct? With the $30 per 100,000. But I want you to pay special attention to 2021 and 2022. And you can see that the debt falls significantly right after 2021. So if we wait to issue Series C in 2021, what it does is it allows us to access more dollars. Actually, if AV grows a little faster than we're anticipating, we could sell Series C for hopefully $77.6 million. That's my target, guys, because that uses up our full authorization of Measure T. And obviously more money is better. There's lots of projects to be done in the district besides, the priority projects, and we've got a plan to talk to you about that. So there isn't a financing schedule for me to show you like I did for the other two components, because we want to kind of push the pause button to leverage this money a little bit more for Series C.
I know
Go ahead.
we talked about in the past about valuation and what's the valuation of the district. And these are all conservative projections. I'm hoping that we're not like overstepping our bounds because we're hoping for 77.6, but because that's what will most likely be the actual evaluation.
The reason I'm saying I'm hoping for 77.6 is only because I hope AV goes higher than our conservative projections. Here's what we wouldn't want to happen. I wouldn't want a team of people advising us, go ahead, we'll just say AV is going to grow by 7%, every year just because it did one time. Because then what's going to happen is those bars are going to go above the 30, because we have to pay the debt, and that would be a political nightmare. There's no Facebook Live interview I could do to make that better. So we use very conservative projections. In fact, we have actually been talking about this for a couple of years now. Measure W was actually born about 2.5 years ago, because there's a lot of work we had to do on the front end even before coming to you for a study session, all right? Yes.
Okay, if I'm understanding any of this, right now, let's say I have a house that's assessed value is $300,000. I would be up to $90 a year that I would have to pay.
Maximum.
Okay. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, at some point, let's say my house gets reassessed at $400,000. Now you can charge me more money because it's got that extra $30. Is that all that included in this kind of thing?
So it's always, whatever the assessed value of your home is, it's always going to stay at $30 per 100,000.
So it goes
as
up
a
and the value of
maximum.
the house goes up.
Yes, please. That's why you're here.
So what we're doing is we're structuring the bonds based on a projection of what we expect the assessed value to be district-wide.
Okay.
So we're looking at the whole pie,
Okay.
and you're just a tiny sliver of that pie.
No, that's fine.
So as the pie expands, so if your house, your house wouldn't get reassessed at 400,000 unless you bought a new house, right? So your house only will go up 2% per year. But so a homeowner, what they're going to be paying over time as we issue more bonds is going to be some proportion of what it is relative to the whole. So what our hope is that as we go out and issue bonds, or as debt service is programmed to go up over time, that the whole pie expands at a level greater than what we're estimating. And so I will say something positive about this so far in the time that we've been working on the Measure T program. So when we did Measure T, we actually hired an economist to help us look at what growth would be projected to be out in this area. We found an economist who is working with Eastern on their capital facilities planning, who had done a large study of Eastern's area, which covers a broader area than our area. And so I had found out about this study and talked to Candace and said, wouldn't it be great if we could go and have him do a similar study for us, which is a sub-area of Eastern Service Area, and help us project out what growth might be in assessed value over time. And so, so he completed that study for us when we did the second series of Measure T bonds. And what we had just observed was the growth in assessed values, which we're basically still using his growth projections. So it's been 3 years. So we have 3 years of data. And right now, we are in actual AV growth $500 million ahead of what his projection was in 3 years ago. So that's great. That means we're sort of ahead of the game because we're still using his growth projections in helping us to structure these bonds. But we know that we've got some cushion in our numbers.
So to use her cooking analogy, you're guessing how much the yeast is going to affect the dough over time.
I am not a cook. I can grill a mean steak, but I'm not a baker. But I think that's probably right.
Okay, thank you.
Are those projections included the additional housing?
It does. Yeah, and every single year when we get well, not our projection, when we get our actual, what our assessed valuation is, we all kind of go, oh, wow, well, that's great that it exceeded, which I'm saying that in a shorter version than Scott. What that assures the board is, yes, we're making conservative projections, and that's to protect our taxpayers.
That money from the state, the 3.5 years away, 4 years, if we ever get it, from the independent opinion, what's the best use of that money? To build more facilities or pay down debt or have a cushion? I mean, what are we flexible with it?
If we get that state money, so I'm going to say when. I'm not going to say if. I'm going to be hopeful, even though I always tell people hope is not a plan. But when we get that state money, the only thing we can use it on is Liberty High School, because that's what we applied for it for. What we would then do is utilize less Measure W or Measure T dollars. But remember, those are the monies that were earmarked for the Menifee portion of the district. So then we would, you're stealing my thunder, Mr. Stafford, on my next steps. That's not my decision. That's not Mr. Bennett's decision. We will, of course, come to you with recommendations like we did in 2017. Yeah, so, yeah, you stole my whole last bullet, but I'm kidding. So the expert advice really doesn't need to be expert advice. Legally, we would have to use that money, on Liberty High School. But then we would just, I hate this analogy because it sounds like we're loosey-goosey with money, but we're not, but we would just move some shells around. So it would free up some Measure T or some Measure W dollars for other priority projects that you as the board would establish. So if I could start from the top just real quick.
One quick.
Yes.
Do we have paperwork in with the state for our Paris High School project as well?
We do not.
Do not, okay.
And the reason we do not, just so you don't think we're slacking, you have to have a Division of State Architect approved plans.
And those were not approved by that,
They have not even been submitted yet because we're still working on the planning. But that's the beauty.
I'm talking about the buildings that have already been built.
No,
okay,
because they weren't accepting at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but I do want, because you bring up a good point. That was, I think, the beauty and the wisdom of the board back in 2017 when you allowed us to use money to begin the planning in hopes that we were going to be successful with the feasibility study, with Measure W, because we got like an 18-month head start. Because otherwise, we would have just now been starting the planning. So thank you for your forward-thinking wisdom in that, because the people that live every day at Paris High School, for one, and at CMI without a gymnasium, I know are very grateful that we're so far ahead. and not just starting the process right now. So next steps. We talked about we have the March 20th and the April 17th board meetings, do a number of elements as it relates to the 2 of the 3 financings, so I won't read those again. Sometime between late fall to early spring, we would want to have another special board meeting, a study session, if you will. We would do obviously some pre-work. Then we would hopefully know more finitely about the state money, not only how much but when, and then so we could give you a state funding update. We got to wait for the state budget act to pass also. But that's when we would have discussions about the icing, so to speak. And there's, when we start talking about a little bit here and a lot here and a little bit there and a lot here, it adds up to quite a bit of money. And remember, we just updated all of our master plans in 2017. And so I think what we would do is we would, as a facilities team with the superintendent, we would look at those like we did before. We would present those again to you. We would make recommendations, and then, whatever direction the board sent us in, that's of course what we would do with that icing. So we're a little bit ways off. I mean, we can start thinking about these kinds of things, but I know at Paloma, for example, there's a number of improvements that need to be made.
You said it had to be earmarked for Liberty, but it just has to be earmarked for the Menifee side of the district.
Right,
correct?
and there is some money, a small amount from Measure T that can go to Paris as well. But again, our plan would be once we know things more certain, which that's going to take a little while because we're reliant on the state. That's when we would schedule a study session with you to. Or we could do it during a regular board meeting if you wanted a really long presentation, but I think it seemed to work well as a study session, because I think we spent about 3 hours at that study session talking about facilities. So those are our next steps. Any questions?
You're the one that's in charge of all this.
I am.
So where's Tonto?
Where's what?
Where's Tonto? You're the lone arranger.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have one question for now I got to follow that. Is there anything else other than what I've outlined that we plan to present to you over the next 2 board meetings that the board wants to specifically make sure that we cover? Just so that we can make sure that we feel like we're well prepared. We feel like we know, we know what we need to bring to you. But were there any question marks?
The CFD that you talked about that has been around, what area does that cover?
It covers pretty much all of Menifee. There's some carve-out areas of that were specifically senior citizen areas. Pretty much the whole, Menifee.
Thank you.
Boundary. It's a huge CFD. You guys manage a lot of CFDs. Is it your biggest one? Yeah.
Do these CFDs overlay Menifees?
They do. There are areas that Menifee would be taxing
That's
just
why
as
you
we.
got the 30, because of 30 and 30.
That's a geo bond.
Oh.
The 30 and 30 elementary district, high school district equaling the same amount as a unified has to do with general obligation bond taxes.
All right.
Yeah.
The CFD money would not be allowed to be used for anything outside the CFD boundaries?
Correct. It was for students benefiting. Correct.
Live outside the boundaries.
Correct. So. Okay. Well, if you do think of anything that you're like, oh, I really hope that they cover that in this presentation or that one, if you could please reach out, to Mr. Bennett, and we'll make sure that we include it in the presentations or in the weekly updates or however you'd like the information. Again, it's $250 million, so.
My questions will be, you'll probably know, are going to be more for Hector facilities-wise. I want to know which way the wind blows, where the sun sets, all
where
of
the
those
water
things.
is.
Yeah, because they make a difference at a school. I mean, those physical aspects of the school. So those are going to be. Hopefully, I can get with Hector and fill that.
Yeah, I know you
in.
mentioned to me the other day. I didn't tell you this yet, Hector, but Mr. Stafford wants to spend a day with Hector. So. I don't know if you said a whole day. I turned it into a day for you, though.
Well, we break it into small visits.
Okay.
Okay.
However you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry that was lengthy, but there's a lot of information, and we'll be back the next 2 months as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can tell I'm getting tired, can't you?
All right, next item, 13.1, discipline is an information item. Keep going. Are we all good?
We're good.
Item 14.1 is an action item, general functions, 2019 CSBA Delegate Assembly election. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nelson?
Oh, I'm seeing.
And who is the second?
Me.
Mr. Freeman. Any discussion?
There are seven, this is for CSBA Delegate Assembly, which I am part of, but I'm not up for election this year. But there are 7 people for 7 spots, so there's not really a lot of, discussion necessary, I don't think.
Okay.
We can nominate the group at large and to fill all 7 spots if we'd like. I would think that would probably be the easiest thing we could do.
Is that the desire of the board?
Well, since I made the motion, I'll nominate all of them at large.
All right, do I have a second? Oh, Randy, okay. All right, so gentlemen, go ahead and vote.
I'm sorry. I should rephrase. They're already nominated. For us to vote for all 7 at large is what I meant to say. Not nominate because they're already nominated. For the
Yes,
position, so.
good to go. Item 14.1 is a 5-0 vote. Moving on. Item 14.2 is an action item, general functions approval of stipend increase for Paris Union High School's District Board of Trustees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Stafford, and is that Dr. Arau?
Sure.
Oh. Yeah, okay. Any discussion?
If someone would just like to present the actual dollar amount that is, so it's not a hidden agenda or anything.
The school board would increase their monthly stipend by $12 a month with 5%, because currently earn $240 a month, so it'd be $144 a year and $720 for the whole year for all 5 board members. Well, this is an opportunity, the board has the opportunity to do this yearly according to Ed Code 35-120E. And we haven't done this, I don't know if we've ever done this, so it's something, their salaries, their stipend's been at the same levels for, I think, 30 years.
30+ years.
So this would be well-deserved for our board to earn that amount. And it's retroactive to July 1st, 2018.
And I think it's important to make that clarification that this is not an increase per se. It's according to Ed Code, board members who serve in a district for 1 student, we're talking about the EDA, to 2,000 students, the stipend is $100. From 2001 to 10,000, to 10,000 is $200. $240. And from 10,001 to 20,000 ADA, 20,000 students, is 440 or 400? Well, let's assume that it's 400. Technically, Paris Union High School District has 9,000, let's say, 755 students, right? So we don't hit the 10,000 students. However, we serve 11,000 students, more than 10,000. Why? Because we have CMI. But CMI doesn't count as an ADA for Paris Union High School District. So if they would count is a number of students, technically, number of students we are serving more than 10,000, and the stipend would be like $400 or 440. So in lieu of that situation that is there with those numbers of students, that's why there is the agreement of that 5% increase that is allowed by law to try to balance out in a 1/10 of of the really stipend that each board member should be receiving. So just to clarify that is not a 5% increase for the sake of the increase, is trying to make it not even getting to what actually it should be. So at the moment that Perry's Union High School District hits the 10,000, it would be the 400.
The next level of
The next level, and I'm sure everybody would agree, and I can say it, at least for myself, right? It's subject to each of us, that 5% couldn't apply anymore, right? Because that's the right thing to do and the fair thing to do.
As of right now, it's a 5% increase over what we are currently being given.
Oh, yeah.
If that number were to jump over to 10,000 and the pay changes, then that would not be, we would not get the 5% over what we are currently getting at that time.
It'd go up to the new
It would be a brand new cap
Cap.
to start with.
Exactly. Okay.
Any more discussion?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I'm fine.
All right, gentlemen, go ahead and vote, please. Item 14.2 is 5-0 vote. Item 14.3 is an action item. Personnel, certificated personnel action items.
Second. So moved.
Dr.
I'll second his motion.
Mr. Nelson, any discussion? No? Go ahead and vote, please.
We have to go fast.
I'll motion his second.
Item 14.3 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.4 is another action item, classified personnel action item. And is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 14.4 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.5, personnel approval of resolution number 1618-19, notice to certificated administrative employees of possible release and or reassignment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Freeman and Mr. Nelson. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 14.5 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.7 is an action item. Oh, wait.
8.6.
Public hearing.
Oh, okay, so next item.
No, it was a public hearing.
Okay, go back.
Why do we back?
Okay, wait,
His screen's different. His screen's different. Still shows.
go back to 14.6, okay.
Yeah.
What are you guys seeing on yours?
Scroll down. Scroll down.
So you have to refresh.
Oh, he's not seeing.
It's showing 14.6. The one that
Okay, yeah, 14.6.
Yeah, we're supposed to be 14.6.
We pulled it.
Oh, okay. Normally it's down by the time we go up there.
So we go to the next one?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Whoa. So now that says 14.7, that's 14.8.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Usually it's.
I'm showing 14.8 and 14.7. 14.7, 14.8.
We're On our screen's not there, it's saying 14, 6, and 7. Yeah, that's 14.
1 second, guys, regular board meeting. There we go. 14.7, there we go. Are you guys all good now? I hit refresh. Do you want to join the meeting again, or? Okay, yeah, we're
No,
good.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Alrighty then. 14.7 is the Paris Union High School District hereby submits its initial proposal to the California School Employees Association, Paris Valley Chapter 469 for successor contract negotiations.
So, I'm sorry. Ms. Fetzer, you said that it renumbered automatically? So we're supposed to go to 14.6? Which is the CSEA, the
It wasn't showing up on
Section.
Edward's computer that way.
No.
Try going back.
You want to go back one more time? That's the same thing?
Yeah, no, that's it now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we're good. Go back.
All right, so we're all on the same page, right?
Yes, we're all.
14.6, the
14.6.
California. Okay, I'm gonna say it one more time. 14.6 personnel. The California School Employees Association, Paris Valley Chapter 469 submits their initial proposal to negotiate a successors agreement with the Paris Union High School District. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, now you have to open the public hearing.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, open for a public hearing at 8:10.
Can you ask for any comments?
Is there any comments? Yes, no, maybe so? Thinking about it? Gentlemen?
Just wait till 11 and you can close it.
Deputy, anything? Just checking. That's when we need Jeopardy music.
That only lasts for 30 seconds. Sometimes we have a whole minute, we have to wait.
Yeah.
We can do it twice.
In your head, man, in your head. You can close it now, it's 11.
I now close the public hearing at 8:11. Since no one from the public,
Now,
is there a motion?
Now I'll give you the motion.
Mr. Nielsen, pardon me. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Rao? Any discussion? Go ahead and vote, please. Item 14.6 is a 5-0 vote. All right. Item 14.7 is an action item. The Paris Union High School District hereby submits its initial proposal to the California School Employees Association, Paris Valley Chapter 469 for successor contract negotiations. And open the public hearing at 8:12. Are there any comments from the public? No? No? Milkman? No? Delivery guy? No?
In your head again.
In my head. I now close the public hearing at 8:13. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Freeman? And my second was Mr. Nielsen. Any discussion? Call for the vote, please. Item 14.7 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.8 is building and grounds, is an action item as well. Ratification of the agreement with Pachanga Band of, how do you pronounce it? Luiseño Indians for cultural resources, treatment, and tribal monitoring services on the Liberty High School project, funded through various facility funds in the amount of $65 per hour, not the general fund.
So moved.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Mr. Nelson and Dr. Rao. Please vote. Item 14.8 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.9 is another action item, building and grounds proposal for architectural services with PJHM Architects Incorporated for the Paris Lake High School Building 200 Improvement Project, funded through the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant at a total cost not to exceed $25,000. Wait, is that right? I see a comma right there. Okay, not the general, oh, there we go. Not the general fund. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Freeman? Is there a sec? Mr. Nelson? Please vote.
Comment.
Oh, my bad. Any discussion?
What exactly are we doing there? This one seems to slip under the radar. Yes. I know they're doing something there, CTE.
Yeah, so this project is basically the 200 building at Paris Lake. The old home ec room will be joined with where the auto shop is now. There's a wall that's going to come down, make that into one big room so that they're able to go in there, more students, be able to hold different classes in there. We're adding a sink so they can wash things in there. It's just basically turning 2 rooms into one and remodeling it for flexibility so they can have construction classes in there. They can have wood shop component, maybe even a welding component outside. So it's just opening up that space into one big room. Yeah, for career pathways, CTE. I'm not sure if it's adult ed, but it'll be for the CTE program.
And just an added comment, this is something that Ed Services, Diane Martin specifically, back even before you started, Dr. Newman asked us in facilities to look into to see if this was a possibility to use these special grant funds on.
And do we expect the $25,000 not to exceed to be able to pay for the entire project?
No, the 25,000 is for the design. Yeah, so the design, PJHM Architects is going in, they're designing, they're calculating taking down the walls, fixing the ceiling, the different components that go on the walls, adding a sink, a drain line, different things for the design. So it's not to exceed.
Yeah, I didn't think 25,000 was going to cover the entire project.
No.
Okay, so it's just the design.
Yeah.
There's no way that's.
With the project, what do you estimate the project?
So everything they're talking about, and we're looking at a project, it's probably going to be about $100,000 to $150,000 by the time we're all done.
Does that come out of grant or general fund?
That comes out of the all of it comes out of the grant. All of it
comes out of the
grant.
CTE funds.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please vote, gentlemen. $14.9 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.10 is another action item, building and grounds ratification of award of bid for category 1 for the Liberty High School project, funded through various facilities funds in the amount of $8,940,800. Is that right? Okay, just, yeah, it is. Not the general fund. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Freeman, and second was Mr. Nelson. Any discussion?
Quick comment, this is for the grading, Hector?
Just yell from back there.
Yeah, so this item is for the grading and earthwork for Liberty High School. This is a first category of 33 total categories we have on the project. So this category gets a project moving. We open bids. We're still looking at all the other bids, but this category 1 is one we need to get moving out there. So by ratification tonight. We're actually out there working tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Any water out there?
Yeah, so as part of the project, we had EMWD bring in a temporary water line from the street, so.
No,
Oh, water? No, no water. We had a really good. No, there's no water's been found out there. What we have out there are boulders. We have giant boulders underground, so that's why the grading package is so large. You know, I mean, we talk about category 1 being $8.9 million, but there's so many boulders. It's what they call a rock job. The graders, you know, is going to have to go in. They're going to have to break up these rocks, possibly blast some of these rocks. So it's a huge job for the grader. All right, thank you.
Any more discussion? Please vote. Item 14.10 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.11 is another action item. Business approval of resolution number 1718-19, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Paris Union High School District authorizing request for a waiver from the State Board of Education relative to statutory general obligation bond debt limitations as provided by Board Education Code sections 15102 and 15268. Is there a motion?
so moved.
Second.
Mr. Nelson? With this public hearing as well, so I apologize. And we are now accepting public comment at 8:20. We're open for public comment. Jose, were you the second? Closing public hearing at 8:21. And, I'm sorry? Yeah, we have the motion and we have the second. Is there any discussion? Not this time?
What is this again?
Please vote.
What is this cover?
Please vote.
Sorry, thank you.
1411 is a 5-0 vote. Item 14.2 is a business, let me double check, okay. Is business approval resolution number 1818-19, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Paris Union High School District amending the policy and regulations relative to citizens bond oversight committees for general obligation bonds approved pursuant to position 39, establishing a new independent citizens bond oversight committee, approving bylaws therefore, and disbanding the prior citizens bond oversight committee.
So moved.
Mr. Nelson? Mr. Stafford? I need to get faster at that. Any discussion? Please vote. Item 14.12 is a 5-0 vote. Item 51 is the information item on curriculum revised code.org course, computer science discoveries, A meets A through G requirements. 15.2 is another information item on the curriculum. 15.3 is another information item on the curriculum, new course transition to college and career meets A through G requirements. 15.4 is another information item curriculum, new course Math 7 Essentials, not a A through G course. Item 15.5, curriculum new course Math 8 Essentials, not an A through G course. 15.6 is another information item, business revolving cash report, January 2019. 15.7 is board policies, community relations, series 1000.
On 15.7, we'd like to pull this one and have it rewritten. It's information item now, but we'd have it rewritten before it's resubmitted.
Right, we're gonna do some revisions on what was in the current board policy and bring back next month. It'll be the same policy, but without the part about it, be able to authorize alcohol on our campuses. So we're gonna remove that from the board policy and bring that back next month for your approval.
So do we need a
So we're gonna strike all of them. Okay, so just to be clear, so that Anna can reflect it in the minutes, the way that it's currently written as an information item, we're gonna strike all of paragraph 4 under regulations.
Which deals
we-
with the alcohol,
alcohol.
allowing me to say, yes, you can have alcohol on our campuses
So that's what.
for an event,
Do
not
we
just
need
them.
to, do we need to vote on it? Do we all agree, or do we need to vote on that?
Oh, no, it's an information item, we don't vote.
Okay, so,
So
yeah,
We'll vote next month on it.
okay, strike it.
So the first reading, Anna would notate in the minutes that we're gonna remove for the second reading that paragraph that deals with that, and then you would vote for the second.
All
Does that
right.
make,
That makes sense.
I just wanted to make sure we were,
Yeah, we're,
okay, yeah.
we're
All
okay.
right. Item 15.8 is another information item, board policies, student series 5000. Item 15.9 is another information item, board policies, instruction series 6000. Item 16.1 is an action item, closed session if necessary.
Not necessary this evening, Mr. Garcia.
Moving forward. Oh, wait, we have to vote, no? Okay. Item 17.1, never mind. Item 18.1, other items by the superintendent.
One other item, we did that, we went through the naming process for the high school, making Liberty High School. What we'd like to do now is look at coming up with a mascot for the school. Because we want to be able to, when we're doing the hardwood floors, you're gonna have to put the school mascot in the middle, and so, well, Candace and I had talked it over, and we thought maybe we'd have a smaller committee work on this rather than the big committee like we had with the naming. We thought maybe we could get a couple board members that were interested in being part of that.
I'll do it.
There's
I
three,
think, yeah, Dr. Freeman is
Actually, yeah.
lives in the area.
it's in both their areas, maybe that would
I
make
think it'd be
sense.
more appropriate.
And then the other people on the committee, we'd have Candace and I, and then our consultant that's been working with Shauna Salazar. Oh, and Sheila Curtis, I'm sorry.
Want to include some of the students as well? Or you were talking about having possible students that would be part of that school. But if that's no longer part of it.
Well, what we would like to do is select the last time we selected, the board selected the mascot, and then we went out with different versions of that mascot and had the kids select from there.
So that would be like when the graphic work would be done. So we were thinking this subcommittee of 5 would pick the mascot and the colors, or maybe 2 or
And
3
bring it back
to
to the
bring to
board
the
to
board, whatever we ultimately
But it's a
decide.
board decision on what.
The ultimate decision would be the 5 of you, yes. But we would like that done, what did we say, by September?
Right.
Because it's not just like putting the mascot on the floor, the mascot ties into the colors, and Hector's gonna need to pick locker colors and those.
Around the
Yeah,
campus
yeah, we don't want him redoing things.
Pink and teal, hey, you got our,
So, Mr. Nellis and Mr. Freeman would join us, and we'll be in contact with you when we get those subcommittee meetings set up. Thank you, that's all I have then for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Item 19.1, adjournment of the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for February 20th, 2019.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Nelson and Mr. Freeman, is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a few.
Oh, wait, please vote.
Hector?
19.1 is a 5-0 vote, and we adjourn at 8:28 PM.
Hector?